Chapter 346. Although there were some unexpected things in the process, at least the first step to solving the problem of this world was successful. After this world was completely separated from the other 700 small worlds, the mirror world was finally powerless and disappeared in countless white light dust. Everyone also returned to the world outside the mirror world in a daze. By the way, because it was not affected by any external spells or supernatural effects, Su Xinxing, who could not be sent back to the outside world, almost smashed her head through the dimensional wall because of the disappearance of the mirror world and fell into an unknown corner of the world. Fortunately, Emily was powerful enough to pull Su Xinxing out at the critical moment. It's just that this time, in addition to Su Xinxing, she also had to control and maintain the mirror world, and also took the bullet for Yuezhing Ningning in her spiritual world. In a sense, the young magic girl who did the most work was also exhausted. She lay on the ground motionless like a dead dog, and even her body was faintly translucent. "That you won't disappear like this, right?" Yuezhing Ningning asked with some concern. After all, the other party was the collection of the will of all the magical girls in the past, which naturally included her grandmother. Whether it was purely out of concern or love her dog, Lu Zheng and Ningning had enough reasons to value this young girl who was tired as a dog. "It's fine, it's just that I'm a bit weak." The other party was still lying on the ground, lazily waving her hand, and used the usual somewhat vague words to show that she was fine. Although Yuezhing Ningning knew that the other party meant that she had consumed too much when she took the bullet for her in her spiritual world, causing her existence to be a bit weak. Why did it sound so awkward? In any case, there's only one thing left to do, right? On the side, Qin Xingyan saw that they had not talked about the main topic for so long, so he decided to start it himself. "Yes, but it will take some time. We have to start by deciphering the composition of the Holy Ring, step by step." When it came to the topic of reality, Yuezhing Ningning's originally good mood became a little bit heavier. According to Yuezhing Ningning's idea, they wanted to use the Holy Ring to gather the power of hope from the people of this world, and then use it to make wishes in place of the evil thoughts of humans. Regardless of the feasibility of this method, in Su Xinxing's opinion, the most important problem was that this method would take too long. Whether it was modifying the spell on the Holy Ring or collecting the hope of humanity bit by bit, it was not something that could be done in a day or two. For our hero, a week or two in this world might be regarded as a holiday, but a year and a half would not be acceptable to him. Although Su Xinxing and the others didn't know, in reality Yuezhing Ningning's own life was about to come to an end. To be honest, if he really had to start from the beginning to fix the Holy Ring, he would have died of illness before he could finish analyzing the Holy Ring. What's more, the Holy Ring also belonged to the UK. According to an executive of the Space Administration, other than Su Xinxing, there was only one other UK item that could affect the UK. So even if there was some progress in analyzing the Holy Ring, it was almost impossible to modify or reconstruct the Holy Ring. But this didn't stop the girls from telling their answer to Su Xinxing, and obtained Su Xinxing's approval. After that, it was up to Su Xinxing to decide what to do. "Emily, there shouldn't be any problems with unsealing the third stage, right? Leave it to me." Emily tried her best to put on a serious face, but no matter what she did, the expression on her little face only made people feel so cute. And so Su Xinxing untied Emily's collar. Then, under everyone's astonished gaze, two strange dark green chains appeared on Emily's collarbone. They could faintly see that they had sunk into her skin, hooking onto her collarbone and shoulder blade-like claws, and had 3 teeth as thick as a finger. And a bit above Emily's chest, a captivating red magic formation appeared on her white skin. Su Xinxing kissed that place and the little girl coquettishly moaned. The 2 dark green chains turned into dark green dots of light and burst into pieces. Then Emily's height grew a bit, and her originally young and inexperienced body had a slight charm of a young girl. Even her washboard-like chest grew a bit. "What's going on?" Zhu Shutong, who had witnessed all of this, was extremely shocked. Could it be that Mr. Su is the legendary pedophile? Is that the problem? Mei Weiner was also a bit confused. "Everyone calm down. Even if Mr. Su is unexpectedly a pervert, we still have to believe that he's a good pervert." Yuezhing Ningning tried her best to calm the panic of her 2 friends, but her somewhat subtle words also showed that she was actually quite confused. Seeing this, the little girl, who was originally lying on the ground like a dead dog, also pulled away from Su Xinxing as if nothing had happened. Only Qin Xingyan, who had seen a similar situation before, was able to maintain a certain degree of calmness. Don't mess around. This is the condition for Emily to use the Great Wishing spell, okay? Su Xinxing looked at the confused girls with an expression that said, "You're making a fuss out of nothing." Although Emily could usually use the Great Wishing spell in that kind of situation, the most he could do was to guess the password of Su Xinxing's bank card, guess where Su Xinxing hid his secret stash of money, guess where Su Xinxing dug a hole to protect his bank card, and other trivial things like that. If he wanted to reverse the cause and effect of bringing the dead back to life, it would even affect the origin of the world to a certain extent. In some worlds, after the death of the dead, the soul would return to the world's whirlpool, or the origin. If he wanted to bring the dead back to life, he would first have to beat the world's whirlpool and then pull the soul out of it. To do this, he could only unlock the third stage of the seal on Emily. Can he make a wish like this? Zhu Shutong was obviously somewhat doubtful. Don't be fooled by Emily's appearance. In fact, in a certain sense, he's now stronger than the Holy Ring. Su Xinxing warned from the side. Hey, I don't believe he can reduce the universe's expansion rate by 7%. Just as Zhu Shutong said this, Emily raised his hands and shouted towards the sky. She did not know how much despair the latter had gone through before she grasped the only glimmer of hope and triggered this miracle. She only sighed. My memories were cut off when I was killed by one of the incarnations of the three calamities. Although I vaguely saw you in a dream, when I woke up, you appeared in front of me crying tears of joy and told me that everything was over. And it's not because we defeated the three calamities and the seven calamities. Instead, it's because you went through an even longer adventure alone and even solved the root of the magical girl problem. How should I put it? I'm not happy about it. She looked and said, it's so embarrassing to say it out loud. It doesn't count, it doesn't count. Yuezhing Ningning scratched her long hair, which was about to turn into a chicken coop. A gentle smile appeared on her face. No, if it was only me, I definitely wouldn't have been able to do this. Thanks to Ling, the others, and the help of those friendly otherworlders, I was able to persevere until the end and end everything. If it wasn't for Ling's encouragement at that time, I'm afraid I would have given up when Sereno sacrificed himself in the other world, right? The girl thought silently in her heart. That's why you're so shy. How can you say such embarrassing things without batting an eyelid, Ningning? The black-haired girl was a little embarrassed by Yuezhing Ningning's words. Don't say any more, let's go and play. Didn't we come here to play? As she spoke, Ling did not wait for Ningning to respond. She grabbed her hand and ran with her to the amusement park facilities. Behind a small bush not far from them, Sha, reporting to Sergeant Xu, Senior Ningning and Senior Ling ran to the pirate ship. Good job, Soldier Wan. Please continue to track them, over. Speaking of which, Sister Zhu, are we really going to keep following Senior Ningning like this? Of course. They actually took advantage of me being in a vegetative state to kidnap Ningning. I'm definitely going to cough as Ningning's best friend. I'm definitely going to help her, check, over. I've spoken my mind, Sister Zhu. And I still feel like this isn't very good. You're too naive, Soldier Wan. We're just trying to stop them in time if they go the wrong way. Over. Go the wrong way. Simply put, it's when they're about to do 2000, and 2000. Over. How bad must it be to not even see a single word? Don't you care at all, Wanner? Over. Actually you care a lot too, right? Admit it, Xiao Wanner, you're such a terrible girl. Over. No, I'm not. Oh? Then should we follow them? Over. Yes, maybe there are still nightmares left in this world. In order to protect Senior Ningning and Senior Ling, I have to protect them secretly. Thus, the two of them followed them in a way that couldn't be considered secretly at all. After touring all the facilities in the amusement park, the sky gradually darkened. Yuezhing Ningning and the black-haired girl held hands as they walked on the road. At this time, the black-haired girl named Ling whispered into Yuezhing Ningning's ear, Ningning, get ready. We're going to get rid of those two little tails. Before she finished her sentence, Ling held Ningning's hand and ran into the box elevator at the side. Before the other two could react, the door of the box elevator closed. So deceitful. Soldier Wan, let's chase. Over. You don't have to say over at this time, right? The girl, who was already out of breath, did not forget to ridicule. However, after they ran down the escalator, the box elevator returned to the top floor. Then Ling and Yuezhing Ningning walked out from it. Huff huff, they must be running down in a hurry now. Ling smiled evilly and then brought Ningning to a corner of the rooftop. Because this place was relatively remote and had facilities like a water tower, there was almost no one around. When they reached the top floor, the sky was completely dark. There are almost no stars. Yuezhing Ningning looked at the dark sky and then said with some disappointment. Because the city they were in was considered a first-tier city, the light pollution was quite serious. At night it was even brighter, so it was difficult to see the stars. Ningning, you can't give up, Ling continued to smile evilly. Yuezhing Ningning continued to look at the sky, puzzled. At this moment, the originally brightly lit city seemed to have encountered a large-scale power outage and suddenly darkened. Thus, what appeared in front of the girl was an incomparably bright night sky. What was even more incredible was that normally, there would be fewer stars in the night sky with a moon. However, at this moment the bright moon rose from the east, and the galaxy in the sky was still bright, causing the girl to reveal an incredulous expression. Ling, this is, because Ningning has done so much for me, I want to repay her a little. Ling smiled gently. In order to get Laplace, Ling's magic book, to agree to help, it took me a lot of time. In Yu Zheng's house, a worn-out, pointy sorcerer's hat was chattering away to a thick black leather book. Old friend, do you think Ningning and the others will be successful? Although my partner is hot-blooded and optimistic, she is still very slow in this aspect. Although I am not her psychiatrist, I feel that Ningning is still a little conservative. After all, I have never seen her mention the word boyfriend before. This makes me a little worried. Besides, what if Ling forces himself on her? Ningning might not even resist. Speaking of which, don't you feel that it is taboo for a girl to have a lesbian relationship with another girl? Wait, speaking of which, should this be considered taboo or not? Shut up. Then the girl looked seriously at Yuezhing Ningning, who was crying tears of joy. Although it's a little late, I still want to say one more thing. Thank you, Ningning. You are indeed my hope. Ling. The girl held back her tears and revealed a beautiful smile that was not inferior to the galaxy in the night sky. The moon tonight is really beautiful. I can die without regrets. Ling wiped away the girl's tears and then laughed. Although it's a little strange for me to say this after dying once. Yes, I also have to thank those friends from another world. If it wasn't for them, it's quite a pity that I didn't get to meet them. Ningning, why don't you tell me their story? Sure. First, I'll start with an uncle with regrettable hair. As a result, our protagonist, who was already far away in another world because of his success, sneezed loudly. Chapter 348. After solving the problem in the magical girl's world, Su Xinxing and the others immediately left and returned to their original world. Because of Yuezhing Ningning's wish to the Holy Ring, the magical girl's world began to close. Although this kind of isolation was nothing to Su Xinxing personally, if he stayed for too long and wanted to leave, he would inevitably cause a certain amount of damage to that world. At that time, if the world that he had painstakingly repaired was once again inserted by another world, it would be like putting the cart before the horse. Therefore, although they were in a hurry after understanding the situation, they decisively left that world. So far everything was normal. The question is, why did you take me to that world? The young magic girl who was being held by Su Xinxing by the collar struggled hard. At the same time she asked with indistinct words, very unwilling to give up. Don't worry, Mo Li, who had not yet returned to his original form, said seriously. Because the landlord is a lolicon. There's not a single word in your sentence that can make me feel at ease. The magical girl struggled even more fiercely. Look at the atmosphere. Lord Demon King, you don't understand people's hearts. Jasmine continued to speak with an expressionless face and a straight face. Why are you talking like you're the Demon King? I don't want to go to your world. The world that gave birth to such a monster must be a barren land full of lava, flames, and black smoke. Even the air is filled with the smell of sulfur. The magical girl continued to struggle. That's how, right? Tina, are you a demon? Even Qin Xingyan, who had little concept of the Western gods, could not help but complain. Of course not. Su Xinxing, who was the center of the conversation, naturally expressed his opinion. I can defeat a demon with one finger. Isn't that more terrifying than a demon? The magical girl screamed in her heart, but considering that she was in his hands, she did not dare to say it out loud. So, why did such a great person like you take me away? Not sure if the magical girl was tired from struggling, but she seemed to have finally given up. She just let herself dangle in Su Shenxing's hand like a doll and asked pitifully. Although you may not be aware of it, but in fact you and the Holy Ring are twins. I'm afraid your existence is also due to the influence of the Holy Ring from generation to generation of magical girls. Su Shenxing handed the ring in his pocket to the magical girl. So even if I destroy or take away the Holy Ring, it won't help. You will continue to influence that world as another carrier, causing it to distort again. Of course, considering that Su Shenxing and Emily had stayed in that world for a day, and there was a trace of their aura left behind as a suppressor, this distortion would probably be delayed for hundreds of years before any clues would appear. However, as a professional savior, Su Shenxing naturally would not let this kind of thing happen that might cause the collapse of his reputation. Therefore, although the magical girls did not notice, Su Shenxing still took away the magical girl who created the mirror world. By the way, Lu Zheng and Ningning always thought that the disappearance of the young girl was because he used up too much strength to block the bullet for her when he made his wish. Therefore, his soul gradually faded and finally disappeared completely. In other words, if I continue to stay there, the magical girl who took the holy ring was surprised when she heard Su Shenxing's words. Then her expression gradually dimmed and became a little sad and lost. It's likely to cause the destruction of that world again. Although it was a little cruel, Su Shenxing still answered. I see. The magical girl was silent for a moment, then showed a helpless smile. That's right, although it's a little lonely to not see Ningning get married and have children, it's still better for me to leave. Sure enough, as the collective of the magical girls will, she has a natural affection for Yuezhing Ningning who liberated the magical girls. Su Shenxing thought in his mind. For a moment the atmosphere was a little dull. Speaking of which, you haven't told us your name yet. Qin Xingyan immediately thought of a way to smooth things over. What? I don't have that kind of thing. The magical girl replied without hesitation. Names are used to distinguish humans. I'm not a human, I'm the collective of the magical girls' will, the creator and manager of the mirror world. Unparalleled and unique in the world. Naturally, I don't need a name. Well, because I have a subtle affection for Ningning, plus I have a close relationship with the mirror world, I'll just call myself Yu Jingjing. Su Shenxing snapped his fingers and said, Hey, listen to me. The magical girl who was ignored. Yu Jingjing screamed miserably. Unlike the last time, because they weren't in a hurry, Su Shenxing didn't use the special skill of an ordinary person's high-speed train, which greatly relieved Qin Xingyan. After a long time, Su Shenxing and the others finally arrived at the entrance of the world where he was originally from. After jumping in, Su Shenxing realized that he originally went to the magical girl's world to avoid the Dodderk from Fuso, but according to the speed of time passing between the two worlds, which was about 1:7, it probably wasn't even the evening of the day when they left this world. This was too efficient. Anyway, you can choose one of the rooms on the second floor, but don't go out until I get you an ID in this world. By the way, can you still create a mirror world in this world? When Su Shenxing told Yu Jingjing about the things to take note of in Sakura apartment, he suddenly thought of this and asked. Yu Jingjing, who was still a little dizzy, stood up shakily and ran to the glass window next to him. Since Sakura apartment had 2 free maids, Song Yu and Asahi Sakura Kanji, the windows were so clean that they could even reflect people's figures. Yu Jingjing reached out, and her chubby little hand immediately inserted into the glass as if it was submerged in water. The glass itself didn't break, and her little hand didn't reach out from the other side of the glass. Looks like it works. But it's not as convenient as the time in the other world. The magic consumption is a lot higher, and the volume of the space itself is a lot smaller, so I can't create anything inside at will. Yu Jingjing answered a little unhappily. It seems that the ability of the mirror world is suppressed in the normal world. But it's normal when you think about it. Probably only the magical girl's world, which has more than 700 worlds inserted into a sieve, can accommodate the existence of a strange parasitic world like the mirror world without any qualms. After settling Yu Jingjing down, Su Shenxing went downstairs with Mo Li and the others. He wanted to say hello to Song Yu and see if he could go to the super administrator's office to get Yu Jingjing's ID or something. But as soon as he went downstairs, he was stunned. Other than him, there was also Chihaya Fukuyama, who was sitting on the sofa in the living room and seemed to be talking and laughing with someone, and the blonde girl opposite Chihaya Fukuyama. Mizuki Takamiya. Chapter 349. Mizuki Takemiya, as the current nominal and actual leader of the Phimea Consortium, naturally had a considerable amount of intelligence. Disregarding everything else, it was not difficult to find the place where Chihaya Fukuyama currently lived. Although almost all the intelligence did not mention who the owner of the apartment was due to Su Xinxing's uniqueness, Mizuki Takemiya decided to pay a visit in person due to her female intuition. At first, Chihaya Fukuyama was shocked to see Mizuki Takemiya coming to visit. She could not help but rejoice. Fortunately, Su Xinxing and the others left Sakura apartment early in the morning, and estimated that it would take at least a day or two for them to return. Therefore, rather than being secretive and arousing suspicion, Chihaya Fukuyama graciously let the other party into Sakura apartment. "Sorry to disturb you." Mizuki Takemiya nodded a little reservedly, then changed her shoes and walked into Sakura apartment. This place. Hanakeyuan Yuan, who followed behind her, frowned slightly. She could not feel it from outside, but after entering the apartment she could feel some strange aura. "I hope I'm just being paranoid," the onmyoji muttered in her heart. "Chiketsu, can you go and pour a cup of tea for the guest?" Chihaya Fukuyama said to Chiketsu, who was a little depressed because Emoli and Su Xinxing were not at home. Thus, the sensible little girl nodded and ran into the kitchen. Asahi Sakurakanji, who was on standby, saw this and was afraid that the girl would be scalded by the boiling water, so he also followed. Although no one said it out loud, everyone in Sakura apartment loved Chiketsu, the only normal little girl who did not know anything. Previously, when Songyu went home, she wanted the little girl to stay at her house for a while, but Chiketsu wanted to stay at home and wait for Su Xinxing and the others to come back. Su Xinxing and the others went to the magical girl world to explain to the little girl that they suddenly had something to do on a business trip. So she rejected her kindness. "I'll go and help." Wu Yejin, who was worried that she had nothing to do and could not show off in front of her sister, also followed. Although Mizuki Takemiya also wanted to send Hanakeyuan away, the latter was her bodyguard after all and could not be sent away for any reason. After thinking for a moment, she decided to get straight to the point. "Qianzea, we can be considered old friends. I hope you can tell me honestly what happened in the auditorium on the day of Jiangjin University's anniversary celebration." Hanakeyuan did not expect her employer to ask this question, and she was stunned for a moment. In fact, she vaguely understood what happened that day. After she and Wu Yejin were beaten up by an unknown black monster, they were saved by someone. Although the other party did not reveal his identity, Hanakeyuan vaguely smelled a familiar smell before she fainted. It was the smell she often smelled when she lived with someone in Japan. After that, when she and Wu Yejin woke up, their injuries, which should have required them to be hospitalized for at least a month or two, were almost healed. This confirmed the other party's identity. Only the nosy guy would treat them without hesitation. Wasn't there a gas explosion in the auditorium? Chihaya Fukuyama naturally did not hesitate to play dumb. "And I wasn't there. How would I know what happened?" This was the truth. Before that, because Su Xinxing skipped work, she and Asahi Sakurakanji had been working in the coffee shop. From this point of view, it was quite tough, although Asahi Sakurakanji seemed to be enjoying it. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Mizuki Takemiya raised her eyebrows and stared at her former best friend. Gas explosion? On the stage? And Hanakeyuan and Wu Yejin both appeared there. It's not a coincidence anymore. Since Mizuki Takemiya had the ability and skills to manage a large consortium, she naturally had the corresponding wisdom. Of course, she would not believe the gas explosion or the console accident. She was certain that something strange had happened on the stage at that time. This gave Chihaya Fukuyama a headache. She used to work with Mizuki Takemiya in the student council. Of course, she knew that this kind of serious nonsense would not fool Mizuki Takemiya. But she could not tell the truth. While they were in a stalemate, they suddenly heard voices from the stairs. Not long after, Su Xinxing, who Chihaya Fukuyama was trying to hide, walked down the stairs. Therefore, the four of them looked at each other and the whole scene became awkward. After a long time, Mizuki Takemiya stared at Su Xinxing and asked, "Have I seen you somewhere before?" Did she not recover her memory? Chihaya Fukuyama was shocked. She was not the only one. Even Hanakeyuan, who was behind Mizuki Takemiya, had the same strange expression. Perhaps even the onmyoji girl thought that Mizuki Takemiya would recover her memory when she saw Su Xinxing. Unfortunately, reality did not play out as she guessed. "If I knew this would happen, I would not have hidden the existence of the landlord." After the shock, Chihaya Fukuyama felt very tired and sighed deeply. No, you probably remembered wrong. Su Shinshing smiled. This should be the first time we met. The first time? Mizuki Takemiya murmured with a confused expression. Many fragments seemed to appear in her mind, but because they were too fragmented, even the girl herself did not know what they meant. The tea is ready. Although it's just a cheap bag of tea. At this time Wu Yejin and the others came from the kitchen with tea. When they saw Su Shinshing on the stairs, Wu Yejin showed an obvious what the f*ck expression, but soon she seemed to understand the situation and returned to her normal expression. She put the tea in front of Mizuki Takemiya. Oni-chan. Chiketsu saw Su Shinshing at the same time. The little girl cheered and ran towards Su Shinshing, but was stopped halfway by Emily. Emily, Nahan, what are you doing? The little girl asked unhappily. Tea. Emily pointed at the hot tea in the little girl's hand. Right. Chiketsu ran down and put the tea in front of Hanakyu and Yuan. Thank you for your hard work, but I suddenly remembered something. Mizuki Takemiya, who felt that his mind was in a mess, stood up and left Sakura apartment without even taking a sip of tea. Wu Yejin and Hanakyu and Yuan naturally followed. Before Hanakyu and Yuan left, she bowed slightly to Su Shinshing before walking out of the door. Really? Su Shinshing scratched his head, and then set a flag with a helpless expression. I hope there won't be any trouble. Chapter 350. This was a small alley in Jiangjing that usually did not attract much attention. In the past, on this small alley filled with trash and debris, there would only occasionally be salarymen who had missed the bus running by in a hurry, or some gangsters gathering together to smoke. But now it was particularly lively here. The police set up a yellow barrier outside the alley, and several police cars with flashing lights were parked. The police gathered here with heavy expressions. This naturally activated the inherent nature of the people of the Celestial Empire. Even if they could not see the specific situation in the alley, they still gathered outside the barrier to watch. Some of the younger ones did not forget to take photos and post them on their Weibo moments. After finishing a speech that had nothing to do with the photos, they did not forget to add a sentence at the end. This can't help but make me fall into deep thought. The other onlookers on their Weibo moments were even more confused. They could only rely on their imagination to understand the profound meaning contained in it. When the time came, they would casually add a few perfunctory words and criticize the system's problems. The kind of public elite style that was full of vigor while pointing out the country's national affairs came out. In short, when the police were taking photos to collect evidence, another police car drove over. After awkwardly parking on the side of the road, Xiao Jingyi got out of the car with Feng Xiaoqing and walked towards the scene of the crime. After showing the police officer who was in charge of separating the crowd outside, he passed through the barrier and arrived at the scene of the crime. Although there was no corpse, the large pool of dark red liquid on the ground left traces that were quite obvious. It's blood, and it's human blood. The team leader in charge of this case saw Xiao Jingyi frowning as he looked at the dark red substance on the ground and said, "How much blood is this?" Xiao Jingyi could not help but click his tongue. After Feng Xiaoqing saw this scene, her face did not look too good. She just stood behind Xiao Jingyi and did not say a word. Not only the entire alley, but even the walls on both sides of the alley were splashed with blood. Moreover, it was not a thin layer but rather a thick layer of blood. And because it had warmed up in the past 2 days, even at the entrance of the alley, one could smell the stench of rust. It was no wonder that after a case happened in such a remote place, it was discovered before the blood completely oxidized and turned black. From the height of the blood splashed, what do you think it means? The team leader of the case team raised his head and motioned for Xiao Jingyi to observe carefully. The latter hurriedly looked carefully according to the team leader's words. He found that the highest blood stains on both sides of the wall were about 5 or 6 meters. He, who had no experience in this kind of case, could only try his best to guess what the old senior wanted to say. Does it mean that the victim's hypertension? The other party had an expression that said, "You didn't become an official through the back door, did you?" In a sense, Xiao Jingyi, who did get in through the back door, immediately lowered his attitude and waited for the old senior to solve his doubts. Although he was a little speechless that a hothead like Xiao Jingyi could become his colleague, and for some reason, the higher-ups asked him to try his best to cooperate with the other party to solve the case. The team leader was still quite satisfied with Xiao Jingyi's tactful attitude. The victim was probably killed on a high place. The shape of this blood stain is not so much a splash, but more like a stain from above. This can also explain why there are so many blood stains on the ground. At this point, the team leader paused, then continued with a somewhat unpleasant expression. Of course, there is another possibility, and that is, there may be more than one victim this time. Xiao Jingyi subconsciously looked up and found that both sides were more than 12 floors of office buildings. Unfortunately, he was not a student or a detective who liked to bet in the name of his grandfather, so he could not find any other clues. Could it be that the murderer committed the murder on the rooftop? He asked. No, we didn't find any traces of the murder on the rooftop. Also, if the murderer really killed the victim from such a high place, the blood stains should be stuck to a higher place. The team leader shook his head and said, that's why this case is strange. From the traces at the scene, the murderer should be a giant over 5 meters tall, but this is impossible in reality. Currently, the world's recognized tallest person was Robert Wardlow, who was 2.72 meters tall. Even if unofficial records were included, it was only 3.19 meters tall. Zhang Shichai, 5 meters tall. Even if such a person did exist, they would be bedridden because their bones and internal organs could not bear the burden. It was impossible for such a person to have the ability to hang someone up and kill them. What about the victim's body? Unlike the team leader who was still thinking about the case, Xiao Jingyi naturally skipped this topic. Because he knew that although there were no such people in this world, there were such monsters. No wonder the superiors of the super administrative office asked him to assist in the investigation of this case. If this case really involved an existence beyond the surface of the world, then it was indeed the responsibility of their department. I haven't found it yet, but if my guess is correct, I'll probably find it soon. Guess. Xiao Jingyi looked curiously at the police officers who were rummaging through the garbage. He couldn't help but ask curiously, the murderer made the crime scene so obvious, is it worthwhile to hide the body? By the way, because of the warm weather, many flies had appeared on the garbage which made people feel disgusted. This could be seen from the expressions on the faces of the police officers. But this time, before the team leader could answer, a young criminal police officer not far away shouted, "Found it. Team leader, I found it." As he spoke, he picked up a black bag the size of a watermelon from the garbage he was rummaging through. However, perhaps due to nervousness or other reasons, his hand was not steady. With a shake, the item in the bag rolled out and fell to the ground with a disgusting sound effect. It was a human head. Since the body was covered in blood, Lin Sanju could not see the details clearly. She could only vaguely make out that it was a middle-aged man. However, even the thick layer of blood could not hide the look of horror and despair on the face of the deceased, as if he had seen something unbelievable. The flies circling around the deceased had only added to the eerie feeling. Because the impact of the other party's tragic death was so strong that Xiao Jingyi felt that he might have nightmares for a long time. As for Fong Xiaoqing, who could still barely keep calm at this moment, she couldn't help but rush out of the alley with a pale face. Humph, so that's how it is. The leader of the investigation team was not frightened, but his face did not look too good. He ordered the other officers, "You kid, quickly put away the head of the deceased. And you guys, even though we probably won't find anything if we continue to search, but let's do a thorough check according to the rules. This is a murder and dismemberment case. Why do you think there won't be anything? Maybe you can find other body parts of the deceased in the garbage." At this point, Xiao Jingyi suddenly seemed to realize something and showed a look of realization. Wait, could it be? Oh, it seems that you are not completely stupid. The hale and hearty old man. Well, actually, he was at most a middle-aged man in his 50s. He grinned, but there was no trace of a smile in his eyes, because this is not only a murder and dismemberment case, but also a serial murder case. Sure enough, Xiao Jingyi, whose conjecture was confirmed, understood everything at this moment. Why did the upper echelons of the super administrative office know about the crime scene not long after it happened, and sent him to intervene in this matter? Because this was not the first time this kind of case had happened. Because it was a supernatural event, the previous cases were suppressed and not made public. Only the upper echelons who had internal information channels knew bits and pieces of it. This is the 5th case, a strange murder case with only a head left. The previous cases did not happen in Jiangjin, but every previous case was closer to here. I knew it would happen here sooner or later. And not only in the Celestial Empire, strange murder cases have begun to appear all over the world. This world is really not peaceful. The team leader shook his head and sighed like a decadent uncle. Don't worry, if it happened in other cities it would be fine. Xiao Jingyi sneered, and his gaze became firm. Since the criminal dared to do such a thing in Jiangjin, then he should be mentally prepared to be arrested. You little brat. Hearing Xiao Jingyi's words, the team leader was a little surprised. Don't worry about this matter, just leave it to me. Xiao Jingyi did not explain, and only left the other policeman with his back facing the light as he slowly walked out of the alley. I'm not so magnanimous that I won't be angry about some strange guy messing around in my hometown. The cold wind blew, and Xiao Jingyi's unbuttoned police uniform fluttered in the wind. The hem of his uniform fluttered like a windbreaker, and he looked inexplicably handsome. It even made the other policemen have a feeling that maybe this guy can really solve this case. Hurry up and help me, Brother Xinxing. Brother, my glory and wealth are all tied to you. Are you a wild man? Su Xinxing looked at Xiao Jingyi, who was asking him for help, and was a little speechless. Initially he was wondering what this guy who had not appeared for a long time was here for. In the end it was just an inexplicable task. Do you have any way to solve this case in one go? Xiao Jingyi did not feel that he was an uninvited guest and shamelessly asked. No scram. Su Xinxing did not hesitate to refuse. Emily, see the guest out. Thus, Emily silently walked in front of Xiao Jingyi and then made a Bruce Lee pose. Cold sweat broke out on Xiao Jingyi's forehead at once. He was not afraid of Su Xinxing. After all, although that guy was temperamental, he was still within the range of a normal person, and after getting familiar with him he was surprisingly easy to talk to. Emily was different. This little girl did not listen to anyone other than Su Xinxing, and although her appearance was soft and weak like a standard lowly, she was actually terrifyingly strong. He once saw Emily punch a black bear into the cement floor. Although Su Xinxing explained to him that the black bear was a demon, and that it became a demon before the founding of the People's Republic of China, these words only increased Emily's fighting power by a notch, and from killing a bear empty-handed to killing a demon bear empty-handed, there was no explanation at all. Wait. I still have something to say, can you make this girl stop? Xiao Jingyi hurriedly said. You see, Siu, as a member of the official violence department, is it appropriate for you to be afraid of a little girl? Su Xinxing mocked as if it had nothing to do with him. Don't mess around, this girl can easily beat the shit out of me if she gets serious. He had no doubt that if Emily got serious, even with the help of the Yuanrong sword spirit, she could definitely beat the shit out of them. No, you're mistaken, Su Xinxing said very seriously. Now that things have come to this, what are you still trying to hide? What I mean is, even if she doesn't get serious, she can still beat the shit out of you. In short, after admitting defeat, Su Xinxing was finally willing to listen to Xiao Jingyi's explanation of the situation in Jiangjin. Xiao Jingyi took out a file from his chest, ignored the word confidential written on the back, and opened it just like that. He took out the case file and some photos taken at the scene. After using the other party's eloquent narration as background music, Su Xinxing began to carefully read the case file. But as he read, his eyebrows couldn't help but furrow. According to the file, this case had happened a total of 5 times. Judging from the difficulty of the crime and the modus operandi, it shouldn't be a copycat. So far, only the heads of the 5 victims had been found, and the rest of the bodies had not been found. If that was the case, it naturally wouldn't attract the attention of the Super Administrative Office. The key point was that out of the 5 cases there was a witness. The witness's testimony was very strange. According to him, the victim was running for his life as if he was being chased by something, but in the end he couldn't run away. Then, as if he was hung upside down by an invisible monster, he was eaten bite by bite, starting from his feet until his neck was bitten off. The victim's head was still alive, but without his vocal cords he couldn't make a sound. His face was horribly distorted for more than 10 seconds before he completely died. By the way, this witness was already under protection, but it seemed that because the scene was too shocking, it caused him to become mentally unstable. Due to the negligence of the protection personnel, he committed suicide by jumping off a building. Invisible monster. Su Xinxing felt like he had seen a similar video recently. After thinking for a moment, he said to Emily, "Emily, go call the new tenant down." If you see Xingyan, tell her to come over. Emily obediently put down the controller, but after thinking for a bit she picked up the controller and saved a file. Then she ran up the stairs. Did you think of anything? Xiao Jingyi saw that Su Xinxing's expression was a little strange, so he couldn't help but ask. I'm not sure yet, but let's ask first. Su Xinxing shook his head and replied. No matter what, the incident described by the only witness was too similar to the surveillance video that Zhu Shutong found of humans being attacked by nightmares in the magical girl world. An invisible man-eating monster, only the person being attacked could see the appearance of the monster. Because the monster could move through the mirror, it didn't leave any traces. Could it be that bringing Yu Jingjing and the holy ring to this world had caused this world to be distorted as well? Seeing the magical girl Yu Jingjing reluctantly walk down the stairs, Xiao Jingyi couldn't help but be shocked. Then he looked at Su Xinxing with a Chongwei, you still say you're not a lolicon expression. In the end, Su Xinxing stabbed him in the eyes with a scissor hand. Ignoring Xiao Jingyi, who was rolling on the ground and screaming, Su Xinxing said to the little girl, sorry, because something happened, I have some questions to ask you. After carefully avoiding Xiao Jingyi, Yu Jingjing sat down on the sofa and replied calmly, okay. Well, it seems that this guy has been addicted to Qing dynasty dramas recently. After slightly adjusting his mood and deciding to take over the TV so that the little girl could only watch Xianjiang and Boonie Bears, Su Xinxing asked straightforwardly, you said before that although it's more difficult than the Yuezhing Ningning world, it's possible to open a mirror world in this world, right? Yeah, didn't you ask this question already? Yu Jingjing, who didn't know that her TV was about to be dominated by domestic animation, nodded. Then can you feel that other than you, there are other people in this world who can create a mirror world? No. Su Xinxing almost flipped the table and shouted, what's the use of having you? Because in this world, other than me, there is no other person who can create a mirror world. However, the little girl's next sentence calmed Su Xinxing down. You mean there are no other mirror worlds in this world? He asked with some confusion. Yeah, unless I open it, there is no mirror world in this world. The little girl nodded. This made Su Xinxing a little surprised, but at the same time he realized that he seemed to be looking in the wrong direction. Then, can you explain what you said in a way that I can understand? Xiao Jingyi, who finally recovered, asked weakly. No, get out. Why? Because uncle who is rolling on the ground while covering his face is too disgusting. Yu Jingjing said without hesitation. Our public servant comrade was completely disgusted. Chapter 351. In short, since this matter had nothing to do with the mirror world, Su Xinxing let the girl go back to her room and continue watching her Qing dynasty drama. Where's Xingyan? Su Xinxing realized that he hadn't seen a certain person. So he asked Mo Li, who had just gone to call for her. The little girl shook her head, then made a cross in front of her chest. Well, it seemed that the only reliable person in Sakura Apartments, Xingyan A Dream, wasn't at home. Su Xinxing asked for the girl's current location through a text message, then put away his phone and stood up. What's wrong? Xiao Jingyi was confused. Xingyan is at the business district. He's shopping with Chuketsu. Let's go there to find them. Hey, isn't that girl a sword fairy? Can't you just fly back with a whoosh? Xiao Jingyi grumbled lazily. It's not impossible, but tomorrow you'll probably be running back and forth all day to erase the memories of the witnesses. Su Xinxing glanced at him, then said, of course, the bigger reason is that I don't want to drag Chiketsu into supernatural events. You've already dragged so many people into it, why are you still pretending to be a lolicon? Xiao Jingyi muttered in a low voice, you know, my family is still in a state where demons are dancing wildly. No, that has nothing to do with me, right? Su Xinxing casually retorted. To be precise, the mastermind behind the Night of 100 Ghosts in Xiao Jingyi's house was a certain director of the super administrative office who had already resigned. Damn, those guys used to fight for themselves. Although it was a bit noisy, it was still within an acceptable range. But recently, their social structure has developed into the primary stage of socialism. Can you believe it? Xiao Jingyi wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Damn it, now I have to listen to the sofa, chair and bed murmuring basic Marxist principles in my ear every day when I go home. Why does your furniture know Marxist principles? Su Xinxing was also quite surprised. Do you need to memorize your own furniture to become a civil servant? Because my university's politics textbook also became intelligent. Fortunately, I got rid of the Bible that I bought when I was in middle school and the King Kong Sutra that my mother brought back from the temple when she was burning incense. Otherwise, in 2 days my family would have started a religious war. Hearing the other party's tearful complaints, Su Xinxing suddenly had a feeling that it was not easy to work for the government. When they reached the street, they found Qin Xingyan and Chuketsu in a dessert shop. Su Xinxing was amused when he saw the dessert shop. That was the place where Xiao Jingyi met Su Xinxing for the first time after he was demoted from a criminal police officer to a traffic police officer. However, at that time this shop was still a milk tea shop. And for some reason the girl's face did look tired, and there were even some faint dark circles under her eyes. It wasn't clear if she really had something to do, or if she was just staying up late to cultivate and play games. Anyway, we're here to talk to you about something serious. Su Xinxing wiped off the question mark that Jasmine had written on his face with her magic. Do you know about the recent murder case in the city that's related to a supernatural being? He asked. Do you know about it? Probably. Earth God lowly answered vaguely. If that's the case, then you should know why we're here. Su Xinxing continued to ask. That guy is just passing by Zhongjin. If it's not necessary, it's best not to provoke him. After a long while, 2D spoke slowly. Listening to what you're saying. Do you know the criminal? Su Xinxing frowned and was a little surprised. Yes, I know him. 2D lowly obviously didn't want to cooperate this time. She stuttered and didn't have her usual straightforwardness. What's wrong? Do you think I can't beat that guy? Su Xinxing naturally realized that something was wrong and couldn't help but ask. No, that guy isn't strong. Maybe you can finish him off with one punch. 2D lowly looked a little helpless. But for some reason. If you can give me a little more time, I'll help you solve the murder case. Su Xinxing didn't answer, but Xiao Jingyi couldn't help it. Don't tell me that as a police officer, I'm going to let a murderer swagger around freely. He turned around and walked in the direction he came from. Since you have something to hide, then you don't have to say it. Even if I'm the only one on this case, I'll investigate it. Chapter 352. After watching Xiao Jingyi leave, Su Xinxing continued to ask curiously, there's no one else here now. Emily sneaked into the Earth God's house to play games. Are you still not going to tell me? If I don't tell you, you won't give up, right? Earth God and Su Xinxing looked at each other for a moment and couldn't help but show a helpless expression. Well, although it's a bit troublesome, if you really want to find it, No, to be precise, it's Emily. She still has a way to find that thing. Su Xinxing nodded. Then he added in his heart, at most, it will increase the possibility of the world being destroyed. Well, since you insist on knowing. Earth God sighed and began to talk about some of the situations he knew. Although you shouldn't have studied the myths of this world, you should have more or less heard of the story of women turning into monsters, right? Women turning into monsters? Su Xinxing pondered for a moment and said with uncertainty, are you referring to the story of the Jersey Devil? The Jersey Devil was a legendary monster that lived in the wilderness of New Jersey. It was once considered the murderer of a large number of livestock mysteriously slaughtered. There were sightings of this monster from the early American Indian era until 1991. It could be regarded as one of the oldest ghost stories in the West. There were many stories about the birth of this monster. One of them was that a young woman named Mrs. Leeds was cursed by the gypsies and turned into this horrible monster. Why don't you know about the more popular stories, but you know about such an unpopular type? Earth God lowly didn't seem to know about this ghost story. She complained with some anger, aren't there other famous ones? Elizabeth Bartholomew, who became a vampire in Pennsylvania, Kyoheim, who turned into a giant snake in ancient Japan, and Lamia, who was turned into a half-human half-snake monster by Queen Hera in ancient Greece. Even in this country, isn't there a story of a beautiful queen who turned into a fox? Whether it's Daji in Investiture of the God, or the white-faced fox demon in Pichu in Journey to the West. Wait a minute, this isn't right, is it? The first few were people who turned into monsters, but the two you mention were monsters themselves. Su Xinxing immediately said, do you think I haven't read The Investiture of the Gods and Journey to the West? Elizabeth Bartoli killed nearly 800 girls and bathed and drank their blood to maintain her youth, so she was often regarded as the origin of vampires alongside Dracula. Kyoheim couldn't get the person she loved, so she simply turned into a snake and burned her lover Anjan to death. Lamia was deprived of sleep because of Hera's jealousy and became a half-human half-snake monster. And because her children were killed by Hera, she became crazy and kept killing and devouring children day and night. It's been so long. Can you guarantee that the records in those books are correct? Can't they be like Elizabeth Bartoli because they like to take pleasure in the process of killing and torturing others so they became monsters? The mushroom-headed girl continued. And let's not talk about Kyoheim. Whether it's Elizabeth Bartoli, the half-human half-snake Lamia, or the fox in Pichu, although the way is different in a sense they all like to eat people. Even Daji has eaten Baigan's heart. Su Xinxing thought about it and felt that it was better not to complain about why a Chinese god would know those foreign mythical stories. So he asked, "You mean the criminal who committed this crime is also the same type?" After a long silence, the god of earth said slowly, "If I'm not mistaken, that person should be the previous god of earth in Jiangjin." What? Su Xinxing, who didn't expect that there would be such a development, picked his ears in disbelief. You didn't hear it wrong, the other party is likely to be a very ancient god. She has been the god of earth in Jiangjin for about 1,300 years. The other party should be much older than that. It is likely that she is the kind of existence that has been born in the mythological era. Earth goddess Loli's expression seemed to relax a little. It seemed that she also wanted to find someone to confide in, but she didn't have a suitable person in the past. Plus, she couldn't get over the hurdle in her heart, so she didn't say anything. That god of earth became a monster? That's right. From the moment she became a land god, her immortal record was cancelled. A low-level god like a land god is actually not much different from a so-called wandering ghost after losing her divine position. Earth god Loli laughed self-deprecatingly. But even so, no matter what you said before, she is a monster that is harmful to human beings after eating people. I won't deny this, but I still want to tell you the story of her past. I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it. Su Xinxing covered his ears and shouted. Are you the heroine of a romance novel? Because the so-called story, secret, and so on will definitely clear that guy's name, right? Su Xinxing said with certainty. Instead of listening to that kind of thing and not being able to do it, it is better not to listen to anything, not to know anything, and directly beat the other party into pieces. Perhaps because she felt that Su Xinxing's words made sense, the god of earth Loli also fell silent. And eating people is one of the absolute bottom lines. No matter what kind of past or secret, once you eat people, you will never be able to stand in the light. Su Xinxing said in a deep voice. His rare serious expression made the god of earth Loli a little absent-minded. Instead of being tortured because of a conscience, it is better to let it rest in peace. As long as they had a certain degree of individual strength, the binding force of the world's laws would become very weak for superhumans like them. Even if Su Xinxing was a law-abiding person, he would not act like a righteous policeman to uphold the justice of the law just because some superhumans killed the dregs of society. But eating people was not allowed. Eating people was a behavior that completely broke the bottom line of morality. No matter if it was a human or something else, once it was done, Su Xinxing would regard it as a harmful monster and destroy it. That was it. Is that so? You are right. The current god of earth of Jiangjin seemed to have given up. He gave up on himself and revealed a tired smile. Letting that lord rest in peace might be a good choice. Just when the atmosphere became a little heavy, Emily suddenly appeared. Mushroom, I overwrote the record of the game you are playing about 500 hours. Saying this, she hit her own head expressionlessly, stuck out her tongue and acted cute, hee. Chapter 353. Did you get anything out of that guy? After deciding not to dwell on whether Su Xinxing was from the physics department or the chemistry department, Xiao Jingyi wisely changed the topic. Something like that. Originally, Su Xinxing looked for the Earth Loli to ask her to help him sense what was wrong with Jiangjin. After all, as the embodiment of the Earth god could be regarded as the most sensitive existence to changes in Jiangjin. However, the Earth Loli didn't try to sense it. Instead, she directly told Su Xinxing where the other party might be hiding. There is an abandoned hotel in the south of the city. Originally, it was said that the investor wanted to build a new high-end office building, but because the construction permit for high-rise buildings in the city has not been issued, he could only build buildings with 4 floors or less. However, the value of the land will plummet and there is no way to recover the funds, so in the end, that place can only be put on hold. As they walked down the mountain, Su Shinxing told Xiao Jingyi the news he heard from the earth lowly. According to the earth god of Jiangjin, that place was originally one of the earth temples in Jiangjin, and it is likely to be the oldest one. It was later destroyed during the Four Olds period, and was later rebuilt into a hotel. And because the previous owner of that man-eating monster had some relationship with the earth god, every time it passed by Jiangjin it would rest there. So, wait a minute. Xiao Jingyi showed a thoughtful expression. He took out his phone and called his assistant Fong Xiaoqing, who was staying in the super-administrative office. After a few instructions he pretended to listen. After a while Xiao Jingyi hung up the phone. Sure enough, Xiao Jingyi showed a somewhat dignified expression. He looked at Su Shinxing. You also know that I used to be a police officer, right? Hey, weren't you a traffic police officer before? Su Shinxing looked surprised. That was an accident. Besides, I've only been a traffic police officer for less than a week. Xiao Jingyi defended himself with dissatisfaction, but then he returned to his previous serious mode. For a rookie police officer like me, when I first entered the police station, I had to start by organizing documents. Actually, at that time I noticed something very strange. However, after he was promoted and became a police officer, he was busy investigating cases every day. That's why I forgot about it. How can you call that investigating a case? Emily and I helped you solve every case you have. Su Shinxing complained. There is. I single-handedly cracked the large-scale car theft case. Is there such a case? Of course, it's the one who stole the bicycle a year ago. I say, can't you be more promising? Su Shinxing sighed and began to reflect on whether he had found the wrong person to work with. Although he was complaining about Xiao Jingyi, Su Shinxing still waited for Xiao Jingyi to tell him the strange thing he thought of before. When I was organizing documents, I once organized the missing people's files in Jiangjin. Is there a B** starred called Par in there? Su Shinxing asked. Oh, what's wrong? Nothing, you can continue. Well, actually, when I was sorting it out, I found a very strange thing. Among the missing people, a small number of them were last seen in that hotel before they went missing. And the disappearances were very regular, about one every 4 years. Xiao Jingyi said in a low voice. After that, I went there out of curiosity, but unfortunately I didn't find anything. However, there seemed to be some kind of legend among the residents nearby. If I'm not wrong, that hotel closed down because of poor management, most likely because of this. One every 4 years, that monster came to Jiangjin to watch the Olympics. Su Shinxing was a bit speechless. Then according to the pattern, the last time something like this happened should be 4 years ago. Even so, I still think it's a bit strange. Xiao Jingyi frowned and said, missing means that no one knows if the person is alive or dead. But if the person who went missing in that hotel was attacked by the monster that's causing trouble in Jiangjin, at least a head should be left behind. But our criminal police team has searched there several times, but we haven't been able to find the body of the missing person. Maybe the monster's taste has changed? Anyway, let's not worry about this for now, let's find the monster first. Finally, when they reached the police car at the foot of the mountain, Su Shinxing made the final decision. Soon they arrived at the abandoned hotel. After easily climbing over the barbed wire fence that had lost its isolation function, Su Shinxing and the others officially entered the hotel. Even though it was already winter, there were still a lot of waist-high withered weeds in the hotel's wasteland. The eerie and terrifying hotel ruins stood in the middle of it. The black hole without a door was like the mouth of a monster, making people want to retreat. Of course, the people here were just normal people. Su Shinxing didn't feel any pressure at all. There were many places in other worlds that were much more eerie and scary than this place. Jasmine, on the other hand, took a branch from who knows where and squatted on the ground to poke at it for a while. Then she picked out a cauliflower snake that was still hibernating from an unknown hole. Landlord, can this be eaten? Emily shook the branch and asked curiously. Yes. Is it tasty? Emily continued to ask. Actually I haven't eaten it before, but it probably tastes the same as Hydra? Su Shinxing answered uncertainly. Hydra. Noun, food ingredient, a snake with 9 heads tastes like chicken. Even though I haven't eaten Hydra before, I feel that your eating habits aren't very healthy. Xiao Jingyi's mouth twitched a little as he said softly. Whether it's healthy or not is another matter, but that guy's head grows really fast. At that time I had a friend who had a big appetite, and every time he went on an expedition he would find a place with hydra and eat until it couldn't grow a head anymore. Then he would chop it up and eat it. This is already considered torture. Hey, I suddenly feel so sorry for the hydra, Xiao Jingyi said half-heartedly with his dead fish eyes. Even though he acknowledged Su Shenxing's strength, he had always treated Su Shenxing's fantastical adventures as Su Shenxing's bragging. Mo Li smacked his little mouth, probably thinking that the hydra wasn't very tasty, so he threw the unlucky snake far away. Although Su Shenxing vaguely heard someone screaming in the distance, "Ah, why is there a snake falling from the sky?" he decided to treat it as an illusion and walked into the abandoned hotel unconcernedly. As soon as he walked into the hotel, he could feel that the temperature inside was slightly lower than outside, and the air was filled with a damp and rotten smell. Su Shenxing couldn't help but frown. In the middle of the hotel's lobby was a huge pool, but now that it was abandoned, no one cleaned the pool, so the water inside had turned into a disgusting green color and was covered by a thick moss-like substance. The glass ceiling that was originally designed to allow light to pass through was almost broken, and rainwater would fall from above and flow into the pool. This was probably why the pool hadn't dried up even though the hotel had been abandoned for more than 2 years. Xiao Jingyi brought Su Shenxing around the hotel, but they didn't find anything special. Finally, they came to the hotel's main lobby. Usually this lobby was used for weddings, but now for some reason, the door was wrapped with an iron chain that was as thick as an adult's arm. Xiao Jingyi first took out a master key. The police now actually have this kind of equipment, Su Shenxing ridiculed. Sister Yu, our lock-picking is righteous. Xiao Jingyi started to open the lock with a strong sense of righteousness. About 10 minutes later. F***ck. The inside of the lock is rusty, even the lock core is rusted, there's no way to open it. Our righteous police officer made an OTZ action. Su Shenxing helplessly stepped forward and gently pulled it. Like pulling a noodle that had been soaked in hot water for too long, he easily broke the iron chain. There wasn't much difference between the main lobby and the outside, but the smell of decay was stronger. Tables and chairs were randomly piled up everywhere, and the wooden tables and chairs had begun to rot because no one took care of them. It could be seen that the hotel was a bit chaotic when it was closed. As the source of information about the hardness of my fists, I don't think that guy would lie to me. Then Su Shenxing made a guess that sounded more reasonable than the previous one. If that's the case, why are there so many bodies in the ruins of the hotel? Could it be that other cannibal monsters also chose that place as their habitat? I don't think there are so many coincidences. Looking at the cabbage, Xiao Jingyi had no appetite at all. In the end, he could only take out a bottle of mayonnaise from the back of the car and sprinkle a thick layer on it. Only then did he continue to eat. He continued to use that impolite and unclear voice to say, "So, I think you're just overthinking things. You're overthinking things. You're overthinking things." Just like in reality, there aren't so many criminals in Conan who want to play tricks with killing methods. At most, they'll just chop off the noodle shop owner's head and throw it into the bin. I don't think the example you mentioned is at the level of just. That's why reality is often more bizarre than fiction. Xiao Jingyi shrugged. In addition to the above 2 reasons, I actually have evidence that proves that the murderer is probably not the former Earth god. Su Shenxing pushed his non-existent glasses and made a wise expression. Do you remember how I described the cannibal scene before? I think it was a banquet? Xiao Jingyi tried hard to recall, then answered with uncertainty. Yes, the reason why it was a banquet means that there is likely to be more than one monster involved. Su Shenxing said calmly. Based on the bite marks on those bodies, it can be roughly inferred that there were at least 3 different types of monsters with different body shapes there. What kind of monsters? Xiao Jingyi showed an I-seek expression and then continued to ask. How would I know? I'm not a forensic doctor. Su Shenxing spread out his hands and made a helpless expression. Some of those corpses have rotted into that horrible state. The only thing I can compare them to is the size of the bite marks. In short, regardless of Xiao Jingyi's opinion, even if the real murderer was really the former Earth god, he and Su Shenxing had to catch the other party first. The murderer should have already known that the ruins of the hotel were exposed, so we couldn't catch the culprit there. Xiao Jingyi continued to analyze, but even if those monsters really happened to use the abandoned hotel as their nest, then as long as we look for similar places, We should be able to find the other party's traces, right? Is it really just a coincidence? However, Su Xinxing still felt that something was wrong. Jiangjin was not considered a first-tier city, but after years of development, it was developed well and could barely meet the standards of a second-tier city. In addition to the merger of several surrounding small places, the actual area of Jiangjin was quite large. With rapid economic development, there would naturally be some abandoned products. Ruins like the abandoned hotel and unfinished buildings that couldn't be completed for various reasons. Even if they weren't common, they weren't rare either. Even Su Xinxing could think of 3 or 4 such places. The probability of those monsters really choosing the abandoned hotel for dinner was too small. Therefore, Su Xinxing still felt that there must be some inside story that they didn't know. If it's not a coincidence, then I'm in trouble. Xiao Jingyi, who had just finished his meal, looked like he had a stomachache. After what you've said, the number of invisible man-eating monsters has increased by a notch. And those things that are definitely up to no good no matter how you look at it are plotting some kind of conspiracy. Forgive me, I just want to be a small police officer with nothing to do. Don't mess around. When I first came back, I was just a small citizen waiting to die. This wish of mine still hasn't come true. Su Xinxing said with a sigh. This was a rather spacious room. On the wall of the room was a huge map that depicted the entire Jiangjin city in detail. But more importantly, the map seemed to have used a highlighter to mark Jiangjin's spirit vein. From the map, the shape of Jiangjin's spirit vein was like a giant dragon that was twisted into the shape of ants. However, there were many branches of spirit veins where the dragon's whiskers and claws were. Although the cultivators could only search for and detect the mother lodes with their senses and their divinations, for the mushroom-headed girl as the god of earth, the mother lodes were as eye-catching as spotlights that were emitting dazzling light in the dark night as long as she cast a spell. Oh, as expected, the living soil from the undying laurel can only block it for a while. It can't be considered a long-term solution. Because the save file had been deleted, she could only sorrowfully do her job. She couldn't help but frown slightly. No wonder you the Great used this thing to block it for a long time, but in the end he still came to the conclusion that it was better to let it out than to block it. This thing is only suitable for planting, it can't block it. Fortunately, with the suppressing creek seal and the living soil, the 2 godly artifacts, Jiangjin's spirit vein could barely be maintained in a relatively stable state. Although it was for a while, that was according to the god's view of time. If converted to the mortal world, it could probably guarantee that nothing would happen for 200 to 300 years. It should have been like this. Strange, the direction of the spirit vein. Why did it suddenly change? The earth god Lowly, who hadn't found anything strange, was about to leave the study for work and try to find the save file when she suddenly noticed that the fluorescent lines representing the spirit vein on the map were flickering strangely. How is this possible? The only thing that can change the direction of the spirit vein is a piece of land, or a more advanced earth god system. Could it be? Just as she was about to do something, the underground temple, which was her residence, suddenly shook violently. It should be known that this was the residence of the gods, and it was also the temple of the earth god. Even a magnitude 12 earthquake wouldn't have any effect on this place. Since the girl took the position of the earth god, only Mo Li and Su Xinxing had invaded this place. The former could directly ignore the barrier of the heavenly realm and directly enter in a way that even the earth god Lowly herself didn't know. The latter could directly smash the boundary between the heavenly realm and the mortal world with his fist, and also smash the earth god into the ground. Soon the alarm system set by the earth god sent a feedback. Some invisible monster had slipped in. To be able to enter this place, but to be discovered by such a low-level alarm system. In other words, this evil guest was sent in by someone else? Other than those 2 monsters, only the Lord, who also has the authority of the temple, can easily break through the boundary of the earth god's temple. I haven't seen you for 400 years. Have you really fallen to this extent? Chapter 355. As the earth goddess slowly walked out of the study that was her workplace, a gust of foul wind with the stench of rotting flesh hit her in the face. Although she could not see the enemy's figure, both her unique divine sense and the information from the surrounding land made her understand that some monster was coming for her. If you look down on me too much. The girl calmly stretched out her palm and made a pushing gesture. In the next moment, the space of the living room suddenly expanded into a huge tunnel with no end in sight. The formless monster that was already in front of her was directly pulled far away by the expanding space. The abrupt marks on the ground had clearly exposed the monster's whereabouts. I would be troubled as well. After all, I am the goddess of the earth. As if a little bored, she waved her hand downwards. Thus, the wide tunnel collapsed as dozens of tons of rocks and soil easily buried the attacking monster. Although invisible on the outside, the monster's insides did not seem to have inherited this feature. When the huge stone pillar smashed into it, red juice burst out like a tomato that was hit by a hammer. For the sake of her appetite for dinner, the earth goddess did not delve into which part of the monster the red juice came from. Fighting the goddess of the earth underground, how stupid must she be to think that she has a chance of winning? She sighed helplessly with a mature expression that did not match her appearance. After all, there are not many in this world like the two monsters in Sakura's apartment. After muttering to herself, the girl waved her hand again, and the collapsed space reverted to its original state as if time had reversed, except that the monster's corpse was gone. It was not that the monster that was smashed into a rotten tomato still had the strength to run away. After all, except for special cases like slimes, any monster would basically be dead when its quantifier turned into mud. It was just that the earth goddess controlled to spit out the monster's corpse as if it was regurgitating food. After a while, nothing out of the ordinary happened, which made the earth goddess a little puzzled. Could it be that the culprit behind the scenes was so scared that he did not dare to attack again after turning the monster into minced meat? Or was her guess wrong and the culprit behind this was not that person or God? The girl was a little happy with this guess. After all, she really did not want to suspect the predecessor who led her to the path of the gods. Just as she began to doubt if her guess was wrong, the soil not far from her began to wriggle. This was a method of communicating with others through the soil. Although it was not a difficult spell, when the earth goddess first met Su Xinxing and the others, she used this spell, although her real body was later found out by Mo Li. But to control the soil in the earth temple, let alone a normal spellcaster, even an ordinary lesser god might not necessarily be able to do it. Finally, the soil slowly turned into a tall lady under the girl's complex gaze. Long time no see, Mississippi. The earth goddess was a god who had lived for thousands of years. Naturally, she quickly sorted out her mood and greeted the other party. You're still the samey. Unlike the crooked human figure that the earth goddess created with this spell in the past, the other party's clay puppet was much more delicate. It took less than a minute to shape, but now even the hair on the bun was clearly visible. Although this was also because the earth goddess did not cast the spell seriously at that time, it could be seen that the other party's understanding of the earth was not inferior to the mushroom-headed loli. Looking at the other party's appearance that was almost the same as when they first met thousands of years ago, the earth goddess could not help but be stunned. Back then she was just an ordinary little girl who was sold to a human trafficker by her stepfather. If it wasn't for the other party who saved her and allowed her to become her maid while she was still playing around in the human world, perhaps she wouldn't have been able to survive that chaotic era, let alone become a god like she was now. I don't want to have a conflict with you. If it's possible, please leave Jiangjin as soon as possible. However, she quickly recovered her senses and said seriously, You're really heartless. You're so heartless. I've always wanted to come back and see you. The clay puppet's face was expressionless, making it impossible for the earth goddess to determine what kind of attitude the other party had when she said those words. But miss, you should know, right? If you stay here you'll make Jiangjin's feng shui chaotic. Perhaps even the spiritual veins will become chaotic because of this. Of course I know, because I'm a divine being. Because of some personal affairs, I abandoned my duty as a god and even caused the heavens to punish me. At first the other party's voice sounded like he was mocking himself, and at the same time, it sounded like he was simply laughing. But then the unconcealable resentment gradually revealed itself. This is too much. I've been carrying out the duties of the land for more than 2,000 years for the sake of Jiangjin. But just because of a few years of dereliction of duty, I've become a lonely ghost. I really hate it. The earth goddess could not help but feel unfamiliar with that eerie voice. In her impression, the young lady always had a sunny smile and loved everything in life and the land. Even when she was forced to leave Jiangjin because of the divine punishment, she still smiled and handed over the position of a god to the earth to her before she left. It was precisely because the young lady loved the land of Jiangjin so much that in the first few hundred years, the earth goddess was not able to get used to the power and duties of a god. In addition, when the spiritual energy was becoming increasingly scarce and life was extremely difficult, she could still grit her teeth and endure it. In order not to disappoint the young lady, she worked hard to protect this land that was not very prosperous. It was only until countless seasons passed and the earth goddess established a new bond with many people and things on this land that her motivation to protect this land changed. Therefore, I've come back this time to take revenge on the damned heavens and this land that once received so many gifts from me, but in the end, did not even have the leeway to shelter and accommodate me. The other party's words became more radical and hysterical. If that's the case, the earth goddess sighed, then I'm sorry, young lady. Her eyes became firm and she made a starting gesture. This was the first gesture that she learned when she learned magic from the other party. Now the earth goddess naturally did not need to use such a simple method to cast magic. The reason why she did it was purely to show her respect to the other party. Because I will definitely stop you. After all, I've already made an agreement with others that I will not let anyone destroy this land. Chapter 356. Mizuki Takemiya walked alone on the street. Ever since the last time she visited Sakura Apartments and saw Su Shinshing, she couldn't calm down, even if she didn't know why she was so restless. Even if she asked the consortium's internal forces to secretly investigate the other party, the only reply she received was that the other party was an ordinary person. But if she wanted to go further, she would receive a warning from Huaxiao officials. Several people from the consortium were even arrested by the Huaxiao police for the crime of stealing classified information. After spending a lot of money to get them out of jail, Mizuki Takemiya naturally wouldn't do such a useless thing again. Of course, this basically confirmed that the man named Su Shinshing, who was classified as a secret by Huaxiao officials, was not the ordinary person written in the investigation report. Doing such a thing without permission. Miss Hanaquin will definitely nag me for a long time later. Mizuki Takemiya smiled bitterly and muttered. Because the irritation in her heart couldn't subside, the girl quietly slipped out of the presidential suite she was temporarily staying in and strolled alone on the street. It was normal for Miss Bodyguard to be angry for doing such a willful thing. But now she just wanted to be alone for a while. Maybe some people felt the same way. When one was feeling restless, sitting alone in an empty room couldn't alleviate the uncomfortable feeling. On the contrary, going out for a walk alone would slightly improve one's mood. The afternoon sun shone on the street. It was still winter, but it was unexpectedly warm. Mizuki Takemiya had been in Huaxiao for a while, but because she had taken the car to Jiangjin University and Sakura Apartments, it was the first time she walked on the street. The subtle differences between the streets in Japan made the girl curious and new. This also greatly eased the irritation in the girl's heart, and a smile returned to her face. Although I've already mentioned it before, I'll reiterate it here. As one of the big sisters of Huanghua Women's Academy, Mizuki Takemiya is undoubtedly a beauty above average. Even though Su Shinshing has been bombarded by the aesthetic fatigue of various otherworldly beauties, he still can't help but admit that the other party is at least a 7 on his scale of 10. With a smile on her face, her unsmiling and aloof aura had faded a lot, making the girl seem more approachable. Although it was hard to say which of the two qualities scored higher, compared to the situation before when most men did not dare to look at her too much because of their inferiority, the girl's rate of turning heads was shockingly high now. Even many women would subconsciously take a few more glances at her, and their eyes revealed a hint of envy. Perhaps realizing that she was too eye-catching, the girl began to consciously walk to a slightly more remote place. Just as the young girl strolled to the entrance of a certain alley, a petite figure suddenly rushed out from inside and bumped into her. Caught off guard, Mizuki Takemiya was naturally knocked down, but the little fellow who bumped into her also fell to the ground. Whoa, why is there a meatball outside? The little fellow, whose height only reached Mizuki Takemiya's chest, couldn't help but cry out in surprise. Meatball? Mizuki Takemiya's cheeks flushed red and she crossed her arms to block her chest. Then she slowly got up and had the time to observe the little fellow who bumped into her. The little fellow looked to be less than 10 years old, and from her appearance she looked like a normal East Asian, but her facial features were very regular, and there was a sense of exquisiteness unique to mixed-race children. At this moment, her face that still had some baby fat was filled with astonishment. Obviously she didn't expect that after rushing out of the alley, she would be hit with a face wash. If Earth Goddess Loli was here, she would probably be surprised to find that the little girl's facial features were very similar to her Missy. Then Mizuki Takemiya frowned slightly. The clothes on the little girl's body were too big for her body, and not only that, they were also dirty, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to describe them as tattered. If she had to describe them, they were no different from a rag. Could this little fellow be a beggar? No, how could a beggar's face and other exposed skin be so clean? Mizuki Takemiya couldn't help but feel a little worried about some of the bad rumors about Huaxia. Could this be a new scam? For someone of her status, this kind of scam wasn't too difficult to deal with. After all, even in modern society, when the accumulation of capital reached a certain level, there would naturally be some privileges that surpassed ordinary people. Scams such as scams might be difficult for ordinary people to deal with, but for the privileged class, killing those scammers was as easy as crushing an ant. However, Mizuki Takemiya had sneaked out this time. If she really needed to use the financial resources and manpower of the Phimea Financial Group, then this escape was bound to be exposed and she would definitely be caught by the Hanacoin. She probably wouldn't have another chance to sneak out again. Sorry, I didn't hurt you, right? However, it seemed that she was overthinking. The little girl who fell to the ground immediately got up, bowed to Mizuki Takemiya, and seemed to intend to continue running. Although I'm sorry, I have to get out of here quickly, so if you have anything to say it later. Where are you going? Mizuki Takemiya, who knew that he had misunderstood the other party, couldn't help but ask. I don't know. Huh? Mizuki Takemiya was dumbfounded. The little girl was silent for a while, then hesitantly said, I can't remember anything. But I didn't forget, I have to get out of here quickly. Did she lose her memory? But judging from the impact just now, it didn't seem to be that powerful. She didn't hit her head either. After hesitating for half a second, Gong Rueishi, who was the leader of the consortium in a sense, could be considered decisive, immediately made a decision. As long as she gets out of here, there should be no problem, right? She decided to take the little girl to see a doctor. Yeah, that should be the case. The little girl nodded. Then there should be no problem. So, Mizuki Takemiya took a taxi and left the street with the little girl. Although the ultimate goal was to see a doctor, before that Mizuki Takemiya planned to let the little girl change out of the tattered clothes on her body. No matter what, he couldn't let the little girl go to the hospital dressed like it was her last time, right? So half a day later, is this really okay? The little girl changed her clothes from inside to outside. Now the first reaction of most people when they saw her was no longer a little beggar, but a child of a rich family. Because the little girl had a good foundation, after dressing up, she suddenly became a lot more beautiful. She was like a porcelain doll that made people want to love her. The passers-by were much friendlier than before, making the little girl, who was still carrying the plastic bag, feel a little flattered. She even trembled a little as she stuttered to thank Mizuki Takemiya. There's no problem, just treat it as my compensation for knocking you down. Mizuki Takemiya didn't care. After all, the money to buy clothes and other clothes was nothing to her. Maybe it was because he was more familiar with this noisy little girl. After walking for half a day, Mizuki Takemiya found that his mood was a lot better. But it seems like I knocked you down. Don't worry about this kind of small matter. If this was a nurturing game, there would probably be notifications like Rue Miyagi's Lolicon level has increased in the game's backend. From this point of view, it was not difficult to understand why Su Xinxing felt a sense of closeness to Mizuki Takemiya, who was almost a stranger to him. However, Mizuki Takemiya originally sneaked out, so he didn't have much cash on him. Moreover, he had high standards and wouldn't buy relatively cheap goods from stalls. So, when he bought clothes for the little girl, he had to use the black card that he carried with him. With the black card's usage information and cash flow information, Wu Yejin and the others would soon realize that he was not in the hotel. Sure enough, it was better to get the little girl to the hospital as soon as possible. So, Mizuki Takemiya held the little girl's hand and walked toward the hospital. When she was taking a taxi earlier, she specially chose the commercial street that was relatively close to the hospital through the map on her phone. After a few steps, Mizuki Takemiya seemed to find that the little girl seemed to be drooling at the cake displayed in the window of a dessert shop by the roadside. She looked at the time displayed on her watch and found that it was almost noon, so she simply asked the little girl, "How about we go in and have lunch before going to the hospital?" Naturally, the little girl's excited response was naturally the little girl's excited cheers. Mizuki Takemiya wasn't particularly fond of sweet things, so she only ordered a matcha cheese. At first, the little girl wanted to order the same thing as her, but she was persuaded by Mizuki Takemiya's words that different flavors can be exchanged. In the end, she finally ordered strawberry cheese. When the cake was served, the little girl tasted the imperial concubine's cake. In the end, she naturally put on a bitter face and stuck out her small tongue. "Oh, it's not sweet, it's a little bitter." That cute and innocent expression made Mizuki Takemiya say in her heart, "Thank you for your hospitality." Obviously, neither Mizuki Takemiya nor the little girl took the saying of "don't talk while eating" to heart. While eating the cake, they chatted. Basically, it was the little girl talking happily, while Imperial Concubine listened with a smile on her face. She only interjected a sentence occasionally. "Is your memory still blank?" As they chatted, the topic of the conversation turned to the little girl's memory. Imperial Concubine asked with concern, "Can't you remember anything at all? Like a name or something?" As long as there was a name, Mizuki Takemiya was confident that with the power of the consortium, he could find out the little girl's identity. "Not yet, but there seems to be something more in my head than before." The little girl frowned and thought hard. "There seems to be a monster chasing me. What is it?" Mizuki Takemiya, who didn't expect to hear such an answer, was stunned and asked subconsciously, "Oh, a monster that can't see what they look like, but I can be sure that they are chasing me?" The little girl continued to answer. "A monster that can't see what they look like." If it was an ordinary person, they would probably take the little girl's words as proof that her mental illness had worsened. However, Imperial Concubine Rueishi was not an ordinary person. Although she didn't have any supernatural powers, she had seen the existence of supernatural powers with her own eyes. Therefore, she didn't completely deny the little girl's words. At the same time, Mizuki Takemiya also noticed that the little girl's expression had become somewhat painful. "If you feel uncomfortable, don't think about it first," Imperial Concubine persuaded the little girl. But immediately the little girl's eyes became clear, and in the blink of an eye, she lowered her head and headbutted Mizuki Takemiya. Mizuki Takemiya, who was completely unprepared, was naturally knocked down by the little girl's headbutt. And the little girl also laid on top of Mizuki Takemiya. Just when Mizuki Takemiya, who was a little dizzy and disoriented, wanted to ask something, the door of the dessert shop seemed to have been hit by an invisible car. It was twisted and shattered, turning into a pile of glass shards and metal twists that couldn't be seen at all. The customers in the store were all frightened by this sudden change. However, since there was no second disaster, everyone stayed where they were and looked at the entrance of the store with curious and fearful gazes. "What's wrong? What happened?" Mizuki Takemiya was also confused. She was also shocked by the explosion of the glass door. Fortunately, her mind was strong and she quickly recovered. "The thing that is chasing me is here. I'm sorry for involving you in this kind of thing," the little girl said softly with some self-blame, "but now is not the time to continue to be in a daze. You have my smell on you, and if you are discovered by those things, I'm afraid you will be in danger. Before they find us, let's leave this place through the back door of the kitchen." After saying that, she took the lead to lower her head and bend her waist. When everyone's attention was attracted by the door, she quietly sneaked into the dessert shop's kitchen. It was not until this time that Mizuki Takemiya realized that the clothes on the little girl's body that she had specially chosen, which were very fitting until now, seemed to have shrunk out of thin air. Not only did the girl's ankles and wrists were exposed, but even her waist was shorter. It looked almost like a navel-bearing dress. No, it's not that the clothes have shrunk. But soon Mizuki Takemiya realized that she was wrong. It was not that the clothes had shrunk, but that the little girl had suddenly grown up a little. If the little girl looked less than 10 years old just now, she was probably 12 or 13 years old now. With a closer look, she could see the change. In any case, she decided to believe the little girl. After all, if the other party really wanted to harm her, there were plenty of opportunities when they were buying clothes just now. There was no need to delay until now. Just when the two were about to reach the kitchen, a sudden change occurred in the hall. The head of a waiter who walked near the door to check the situation was forcibly twisted off by an invisible thing in front of everyone's eyes. The bloody visual effect frightened all the customers at once. Some people hid under the tables, some screamed, and some fled into the depths of the shop. Ugh! Mizuki Takemiya, who happened to see this scene, felt her stomach churn, but she forced herself to swallow the sour water that surged up to her throat. I'm sorry, although it's a bit sudden. Now we have two choices. One is to continue sneaking away like this because there are many baits that can buy us a long time, the little girl suddenly said softly. The second is to stand up and rush to the back door now. This way we will become the bait that can directly lead the invisible monster away and save the other customers. After all, the target of those monsters is me. They won't waste time killing unnecessary people when they find the target. The problem is that you will be in extreme danger like me. The second choice, let's run. Why? Although I don't know you well, judging from your attitude toward money, I'm afraid you're not an ordinary person, right? Obviously you have a better chance of survival. If you survive, you will have a better life in the future. In contrast, the other side is just a few ordinary people's lives. Moreover, they are not killed. Why do you make such a choice? Are you not afraid of death? Actually, I'm somewhat similar to you. Although I'm not sure, I should have also lost a part of my memory. Probably because of this, I care so much about you. Mizuki Takemiya smiled calmly. It's just that in that memory there is a very important person to me. If I choose to sacrifice others in order to survive today, then when I remember who that person is in the future, I will definitely not be able to stand beside him with a clear conscience. Is that so? The little girl showed a surprised expression, but it quickly turned into a happy smile. Then get ready to run. As soon as the word run came out of her mouth, she pulled Mizuki Takemiya and quickly rushed out of the back door. After running out of the door, the little girl did not forget to snap her fingers at the door. The cement walls on both sides of the door began to close, directly blocking the back door. However, this did not buy much time. A few seconds later, the entire wall was knocked down by an invisible behemoth. Although the appearance of the monster could not be seen when the wall collapsed, the smoke that filled the air outlined the outline of the monster. It was a humanoid monster that was about 3 meters tall and 2 meters wide. It was incomparably sturdy. Don't stop running. If you're caught, you're done for. The little girl held Mizuki Takemiya's hand and quickly ran. While running, it was not too late to create pits, quicksand, swamps, and other traps on the ground to hinder the enemy's pursuit. Fortunately, this section of the road was similar to a small alley and no one passed by. Otherwise, they would have been frightened by the little girl's strength. At the same time, Mizuki Takemiya sincerely hoped that the traps would not harm any innocent passers-by in the future. However, those traps did not seem to have much effect. From the heavy footsteps of the enemy, they could tell that not only did the enemy not pull away from the girls because of the traps, but instead shorten the distance between them. Although Mizuki Takemiya's sports results were not bad, but that was only compared to the other students in Huanghua Women's College. It was definitely incomparable to the inhuman stage. However, under the control of the little girl, the entire ground seemed to be helping the imperial concubine. It was unusually easy to run and her speed was also very fast. However, this was already the limit. Restricted by the human body, after running for more than a minute, Mizuki Takemiya started to pant. Oh no, the little girl's exclamation seemed to be stuck in her throat. Only a dull dong sound was heard. The invisible monster suddenly leaped from behind and directly landed in front of them. The evidence was the pit in the road in front of them due to the heavy object that landed on the ground. She's still hiding such a trick. Damn it, I was too careless. The little girl's voice sounded regretful. There was no escape. Even if she could not see the enemy's figure, the piercing murderous intent was enough to let her know that the enemy was right in front of her. Once upon a time she seemed to have felt this kind of despair. At that time, what happened? Who was it that saved her? She couldn't remember. As expected, I'm still somewhat unwilling. Originally, Mizuki Takemiya had only come out for a stroll and was completely unprepared to face death. In the end, she revealed a somewhat sorrowful and bitter smile. As if in response to the little girl's bitter feelings, white snowflakes began to float down from the sky. The person who had once saved her, would he appear again? I've received the news from the forensics department. The identities of the deceased have basically been matched. They were all people who went missing a while ago. However, most of them were homeless people who would not attract any attention even if they went missing. Xiao Jingyi put away his phone and revealed an excited expression. He said to Su Shenxing, "The degree of decomposition of the corpses is different. Moreover, among the corpses, there are a few that are already highly decomposed. To decompose to that extent in the winter it would take quite a long time. Based on this, I have some ideas." After saying this, Xiao Jingyi went back into the police car and took out a map of Jiangjin City and a black water-based pen. First is this homeless person. According to the forensics department, he is the first victim. Let's call him A. Why use the abbreviation? Didn't you already figure out the identity of the deceased? Su Shenxing asked curiously. When I called just now, I thought that might be the case, so I've already asked the criminal police to go to the more remote places near this line to see if they can find anything. Before Xiao Jingyi finished speaking, his phone rang. He smiled apologetically at Su Shenxing, then picked up the phone. With Su Shenxing's hearing, he naturally heard what the loud voice of the case team leader said on the phone. Just as Xiao Jingyi guessed, in the more remote places near the line, the police had found the heads of 3 victims. Although there were still 5 heads that had not been found, it was only a matter of time now. In other words, the first 8 victims were killed with the abandoned hotel as the center. Su Shenxing thought for a moment and felt that it was useless to think about it, so he called Xingyan A Meng and told him the information that he had found so far. There are many kinds of formations that use the heads or skulls of the deceased to set up a formation, but none of them are righteous methods. Among them, the ghost Dao is the best, but currently the ghost Dao is declining, so the possibility of them doing it is not high. This time Xingyan A Meng was as helpful as always. After listening to Su Shenxing's description, he began to talk. Also, according to what you said, after the enemy finished setting up a formation, they didn't activate it. Instead, they went to hunt humans in other places that they didn't want to lock up. Then there are 2 possibilities. First, they planned to set up a composite formation that was made up of several or even dozens of formations. Second, there was a problem with the formation core that they set up, causing it to fail. So they had to set it up again. In short, without a detailed formation map, I can't be sure what kind of formation it is. I will try to analyze it, but don't get your hopes up. What? A way to stop it? Well, according to what you can understand, just kill the person who set up the formation. After hanging up the phone, Su Shenxing thought carefully about the meaning of Qin Xingyan's words and finally confirmed one thing. Shit. In the end, we still have to find the enemy first. Don't be so depressed. Don't forget that there were more than 8 victims in the abandoned hotel. Xiao Jingyi looked full of confidence. He continued to compare the information and the map in his WeChat and explained to Su Shenxing, "The 9th victim is an uncle. Well, because we started from scratch, let's call him 2A. He's an otaku. We only found out that the body was his after we checked his fingerprints. Before that, no one found out that he was dead. In short, his range of activities, Xiao Jingyi took a pen and pointed on the map, then wrote 2A next to it. Well, think about it from a good point of view. After giving it to us, we have a more accurate coordinate reference." Su Shenxing felt a subtle sense of sadness, so he didn't say anything. Then the 10th victim is a young lady. Let's call her 2B for now. I think this code name is full of malice. Su Shenxing complained. Are you unhappy that 2B is a young lady? So why use this code name? In short, after a round of argument and explanation, Xiao Jingyi marked the areas of activities of the remaining victims. Because 2A was an otaku and the only victim's body that was found before the abandoned hotel was found, the center of the circle was quickly found. The most eye-catching building in that area was Jiangjin University. Xiao Jingyi said softly. My alma mater is really full of disasters. Su Shenxing sighed. During the school anniversary celebration they went back and forth a few times. He didn't expect that they would have to continue this time. He hoped that this incident wouldn't be too big. Otherwise, the school leaders who were already in a terrible state due to the explosion in the auditorium would all have their blood vessels exploding. In short, after confirming the possible location of the enemy, the 2 of them quickly rushed to Jiangjin University in the police car. Although it was winter break today, there were still many Jiangjin local students who came to the school to participate in club activities, or simply to use the field to play basketball or football. The school was also peaceful. It didn't look like Avicii at all as Su Xinxing and the others had imagined. The most dangerous place is the safest place. As expected of a man-eating monster, it's really cunning. Xiao Jingyi smiled coldly. Dangerous my ass. For a man-eating monster this is a warehouse. When you stand in a bakery surrounded by all kinds of delicious bread, do you think it's dangerous? Yes, in the sense of a wallet. Because he had Xiao Jingyi's police badge with spirit of speech, Su Xinxing didn't need to use persuasion physics and amnesia physics on the school's higher-ups one by one. It was more convenient. However, Jiangjin University covered a large area, and there were countless classrooms and miscellaneous rooms. Su Xinxing was fine, but Xiao Jingyi was so tired that he was about to kneel after running around half of the school. However, this kind of thing couldn't be entrusted to other police officers. After all, only Su Xinxing could see through the illusion at the moment. This won't do. If this continues, when will it end? Xiao Jingyi's entire body was burned to ashes. However, Su Xinxing felt that something was wrong. Just as he said, Jiangjin University was full of students. For most monsters, a place with a lot of people could confuse the monster slayer's observation skills, and they could mix in until it was safe. However, that was only for ordinary monsters. For a big monster like Qiongqi, even if it turned into a human and mixed in with the humans, Su Xinxing would be the first to pull it out and beat it up. Damn, which human would grow up to look like that with a green face and fangs? Even if it wasn't a big monster but just some small monsters that ate humans, their aura would be very unique. After turning into a human, their temperament would be completely different from ordinary people. Even if it couldn't be said to be a crane in a flock of chickens, most people would still find it strange. Even if they tried their best to hide it, the suppression of the food chain meant that the mentality of viewing humans as food couldn't be easily changed. Moreover, judging from the continuous crimes and the situation of the corpses being eaten, those monsters should be the more brutal type. In a situation where there was no strong restraint, they should be able to act according to their mood and attack humans wantonly. However, until now, Jiangjin University didn't show any signs of unrest. This was very strange. After telling Xiao Jingyi his doubts, Xiao Jingyi also frowned. He was different from Su Xinxing. He didn't know about supernatural existences like monsters. While his family was always researching how to tap into the potential of their own furniture, and recently seemed to be planning to join the Flying Apsara's noodle cult. Therefore, his way of thinking was different from Su Xinxing and he didn't think of this point. Could it be that there was a mistake? But according to the situation in the abandoned hotel, the second center should be Jiangjin University. In a situation where the most likely inference was overturned, Xiao Jingyi began to feel like a headless fly, and he became clueless. However, Su Xinxing seemed to have thought of something and suddenly asked, why did those monsters set the first center? Or rather, the formation eye in the abandoned hotel? Because there were fewer people there. When he said this, Xiao Jingyi also realized that something was wrong. If the first formation eye was set in the abandoned hotel because it wasn't easy to find there, then why was the second formation eye set in Jiangjin University? One had to know that even during the winter vacation, the flow of people at Jiangjin University would not be small. If the second formation eye was set here, it was completely contrary to the reason why the first formation eye was set in the abandoned hotel. Not only that, in fact we can think about it in reverse. What if those monsters set the formation eye in the abandoned hotel not because there were fewer people? Su Xinxing said in a deep voice. Not because there were fewer people? Xiao Jingyi thought hard, but he still couldn't come up with a conclusion. Don't forget that hotel used to be a Tudi temple. Although the method that humans chose to build Tudi temples seems to be more metaphysical, there really was land there back then. So, can we think that it was the core of Jiangjin's spirit veins? Su Xinxing also knew that his question was a bit out of line for Xiao Jingyi, who grew up in an atheist education, so he didn't beat around the bush and directly told him his speculation. After all, Xiao Jingyi's worldview was destroyed and rebuilt less than a year ago, so it was normal that he didn't know much about it. Even Su Xinxing learned some relevant knowledge because there was a god living in his house, and the Tudi god always came to Sakura apartments for free. You mean? Xiao Jingyi seemed to have thought of something, and his face showed a surprised expression. That's right, didn't Xingyan say it? The reason why those monsters set up the second formation eye is probably because their first formation didn't work. Why didn't the second formation work? Because the core of Jiangjin's spirit veins for various reasons is no longer there. Su Xinxing obtained the Zhenchuan seal from Fusang, the laurel soil given to them by the Chong Shaoxian, the abandonment and reconstruction of the current Tudi god's residence, and the mushroom-headed lowly once said that the spirit veins leaked hundreds of years ago in Jiangjin. With so many changes, how could the core of Jiangjin's spirit veins still be in the abandoned hotel? Based on how lazy the Tudi god was, the core of the spirit veins had probably been moved to the current Tudi god's residence long ago. If I'm not wrong, I'm afraid that the final target of those monsters is the current Tudi god's residence in Jiangjin. Su Xinxing shook the map that was covered with Xiao Jingyi's doodles. Your guess is right, the second formation I is indeed in the middle of the circle, but it's not Jiangjin University. It's under the abandoned apartment in the mountains behind Jiangjin. But didn't nothing happen when we went there before? Xiao Jingyi asked curiously. Don't forget that the 16 corpses are all in the abandoned hotel. In other words, until the formation is completed, those monsters won't attack the current Tudi god in Jiangjin to avoid alerting the enemy. Su Xinxing guessed, but according to the situation of the first formation, 8 corpses are enough to set up the formation. I'm afraid that those monsters will attack the current Tudi god soon. Then should we go over? Xiao Jingyi immediately asked. But before Su Xinxing could answer, the police officer's phone rang again. Hello, I'm very busy right now. Xiao Jingyi was a little impatient at first. It wasn't easy to catch the enemy's tail. Just as they were about to enter the boss battle, the village chief of the novice village sent a beginner's mission over. Chapter 357. Fortunately, Su Xinxing was quite familiar with most of the areas in Jiangjin when he was working as a delivery man. Therefore, although the specific location was not mentioned over the phone, it was not a problem as long as he had a general direction. Without Jasmine by his side, teleportation physical was naturally impossible. Therefore, Su Xinxing could only run to the scene of the incident in the form of a normal person's high-speed train. It wasn't that he couldn't run faster, but if he continued to accelerate, Yunlin wouldn't be able to block and eliminate the sonic boom and other overflowing energy caused by his running. This would cause irreversible damage to the entire city. But even so, in less than half a minute he had already arrived at the scene of the incident. The messy shop entrance was the best indicator. A few policemen seemed to be trying to maintain order. A person who looked like a survivor who had escaped from the shop was emotionally describing what had happened in the shop to one of the policemen. But for some reason the policemen seemed to be hesitating whether to go in or not. They were probably waiting for backup. Su Xinxing casually found an answer from his limited police knowledge, which mainly came from movies and TV series. While no one seemed to notice him, Su Xinxing easily crossed the barricade used to block the entrance of the shop and ran into the dessert shop. After he went in, he realized why the police didn't come in. There were a total of 3 corpses at the entrance of the shop, and all of them were decapitated. 2 of them were wearing police uniforms. It seemed that the policemen came in immediately after receiving the report, but they were immediately killed before they could find the culprit. Perhaps there were other policemen who witnessed this terrifying and unbelievable scene, so now all the policemen were waiting outside for backup and did not come in again. Su Xinxing was temporarily relieved that there was no female among the corpses on the ground. In other words, Mizuki Takemiya should still be alive. He carefully looked at the corpses. The cause of death of the 3 victims was exactly the same. Their heads were directly twisted off by a huge force. Su Xinxing had seen similar wounds before. In some lattice worlds, the demons who occupied the world liked to boast about their evil power. One of the most common ways was to twist the human head off. At this moment, a cold and thick tentacle-like thing suddenly wrapped around Su Xinxing's neck. Then the tentacle suddenly tightened, wanting to strangle Su Xinxing to death. This made Su Xinxing happy. It seemed that the culprit was still alive. So he pinched the tentacle-like thing and heard a splashing sound. The tentacle directly broke and thick red blood spurted out. Almost at the same time, a low and hoarse roar came from the top of Su Xinxing's head. It seemed that the monster could also feel pain. Without any hesitation, Su Xinxing punched the ceiling again. Suddenly, nearly half of the entire ceiling was directly blown away and disappeared. Even the dark clouds in the sky were blasted into a circular gap. After a long while, the gap slowly closed, and then pure white snowflakes floated into the shop. Yeah, I used too much strength. I've stopped training for so long, but my strength is still getting stronger. Su Shenxing's face was a little ugly. Even though he had tried his best to control his strength, he did not expect to cause too much damage. But the feeling just now, is it a monster? No, is it a monster? After Su Shenxing mastered his strength, he could almost kill everything with a single blow. However, after many battles, he could still distinguish the general species of the creatures he killed. It was just like humans stepping on insects. Even if it took the same amount of strength, the feeling of stepping on an ant and stepping on a cockroach should be different, right? By the way, the part that wrapped around Su Shenxing's neck, which he thought was a tentacle, seemed to be the monster's tail. However, after making the decision to let Xiao Jingyi deal with the aftermath, Su Shenxing threw this matter to the back of his mind. The police outside were a little surprised by the sudden change in the shop, but they still did not look like they were going to rush in. This also gave Su Shenxing a chance to search for Mizuki Takemiya. But for some reason he seemed to be unable to sense Mizuki Takemiya's aura in the shop. If you are looking for the two girls. At this time a waiter hiding under the table plucked up his courage and said to Su Shenxing, they just ran away from the back door of the kitchen, but it seems that an invisible monster is chasing after them. Thanks, you just stay here and wait for rescue. I think the police will be unable to hold back and rush in soon. After Su Shenxing thanked the waiter, he ran toward the kitchen that the waiter pointed out. At this time the back door of the kitchen had disappeared. To be precise, it disappeared along with the wall where the back door was originally located. Su Shenxing hurriedly chased out. Fortunately, the ground in the back alley was full of potholes, full of terrain that did not seem to be formed naturally or could be seen in the city. So Su Shenxing immediately chased in that direction. But after turning a corner, his heart suddenly sank to the bottom of the valley. It was still a small alley, but this time the alley was filled with bright red blood stains. It looked just like the photos of the murder scene that Xiao Jingyi had shown him before. Could it be that he was too late? Su Shenxing regretted in his heart and punched the wall next to him. Even though he controlled his strength, he still smashed a spider web-like hole in the wall. I can't save them again. Sure enough, but soon after he realized that something was wrong. It was a tall but very thin humanoid creature wearing a black suit, but it had no facial features and there were black tentacle-like organs behind it. This was one of Hanaquin's Shikigami, the slender man whose hands were once broken by Mo Li. As an anomaly born from urban legends, as long as the rumors about it still existed, the thin, long ghost would not be completely eliminated. Even when Jasmine beat the crap out of it, it only took a short period of recuperation for it to recover to its current state. According to urban legends, humans who were targeted by the skinny ghostly figure were almost never able to escape its pursuit. Therefore, this Shikigami could also use other means of perception other than sight to find its prey. However, it was a mystery whether this creature had vision or not since it had no eyes. In short, with this ability, the slender man would not be unable to attack because he could not seek the enemy. Almost at the moment he appeared, the tentacles behind him had already wrapped around something in the air. Then the invisible monster naturally began to counterattack, biting off a few of the slender man's tentacles, but this could not prevent it from being bound by the remaining tentacles of the slender man. But this was the end. The invisible monster's body was far stronger than normal creatures, and it was almost immune to any of the slender man's attacks. At the same time, as a monster, it could also be immune to the effects of the slender man's sanity. Urban legends said that even if someone successfully escaped from the slender man, they would eventually be affected by it and become crazy. However, Hanaquin did not intend to rely on the slender man's attack power to finish off her opponent. From the beginning, she only wanted to bind her opponent for a short period of time. Shikigami Summon, Half-Step Giant Gate, Modified. In the next moment, the bound monster, along with the skinny monster that was trying to bind it, was stomped into a pancake by the elephant's leg that descended from the sky. Unlike the gigantic elephant leg she used to deal with Mo Li, the half-step giant gate this time was much smaller. Although its power would be reduced, its accuracy would be greatly improved. This was one of the results of the Yin-Yang Master Girl's training during this period of time. She did not know why, but she always felt that if she really dared to use the full version of the half-step giant gate to destroy half of Jiangjin Street, she would definitely regret it for some reason. The slender man was a pure concept creature, and after being stomped on, it only turned into a funny paper-like shape. After waving its hand in protest at Hannequin, it disappeared. However, the invisible monster was like a stepped tomato, splattering blood all over the ground. If it was placed on some video websites in Huaxiao, it would be at the level of a holy light or dark priest. Hannequin sighed softly and finally relaxed. In short, it's not convenient to talk here, it's better if we leave first. Miss Wea's car is still waiting for us outside. Hannequin, so you came here by car? Mizuki Takemiya was surprised. Of course. Because cars are cheap and fast. If they used wind scythe magic to rush here, I don't even know if I have enough Reiki to fight with the enemy. Hannequin explained. Moreover, the paper talismans used to cast spells are also very expensive. How should I put it? I feel like it's unexpectedly realistic. Mizuki Takemiya's face showed an expression of disillusionment. With concubine Gong Rueishi and the confused little girl, they turned left and right for a long time in Blossom Courtyard before finally finding the exit of the alley with great difficulty. Not long after, a limousine stopped at the intersection. Wanima. As soon as the door opened, Wu Yejin rushed towards Mizuki Takemiya, but was blocked by Hannequin skillfully. Let's talk in the car. When everyone got on the limousine and drove to the hotel, Mizuki Takemiya roughly told the two of them what happened. In other words, the cause of all this is you, little girl? Wu Yejin said with righteous indignation while driving. From the results, yes. The little girl nodded, but please believe me, I didn't want to do this. But you have involved my employer in danger. This point is irrefutable. Hanekeyuan Yuan seized the opportunity to say, yes, so I suggest you let me go now, I will try to live alone. The little girl said very seriously. Hannequin Yuan looked at Mizuki Takemiya. The meaning was clear, let her make the decision. Sorry, before making a decision, can I know the cause of this matter? Mizuki Takemiya thought for a moment and asked the little girl. Didn't you ask before? The little girl asked curiously, why do you want to ask again? Although I can't tell the exact reason, I feel that you are a little different from your previous naive appearance. Mizuki Takemiya took a deep breath and replied, people's experience will affect people's personality, and the so-called memory is the proof of experience. When you retrieved part of your memory because the experience is different from before, your personality has also changed. Am I right? I didn't expect that the words I asked you outside the kitchen before would make you feel this way, but generally speaking you are not wrong. The little girl nodded. Although it is not complete, I did recover a little memory. You are not an outsider here, so I will simply tell you. After speaking, the little girl was silent as if she was hesitating where to start. After organizing her words for a while, she began to say, although it is somewhat unbelievable, I am actually the former god of this land. Earth god? Like Ksiddhagarbha? Mizuki Takemiya revealed a surprised expression. No, Ksiddhagarbha Bodhisattva is much higher than the earth god in terms of divine level. The little girl shook her head and said, actually that is not right. To be precise, I am only half. Although Hanekeyuan, who had studied Huaxia and Fusang mythology, wanted to say something, in the end she did not say anything and waited quietly for the other party to continue. Because of some reason the original me split into two people. One is the me in front of you and the other is the leader of the man-eating monsters. The little girl continued, if I have to make an analogy, my relationship with her now is like a balloon in the middle with a rubber band. If one side becomes bigger, the other side will become smaller and vice versa. And the gas in the balloon can be seen as our original memories and strength. The little girl looked at Mizuki Takemiya. The reason why I had no memory of you when I first met you was because the balloon on my side was already extremely small. It could only maintain the most basic survival knowledge and the strength of a normal person. Then how did you recover to this extent? Mizuki Takemiya asked curiously. She thought about what they had done at that time and asked, could it be because you ate food? If you don't know, then say it. The little girl replied confidently. Hey, can you be a little more reliable? Five-leaf pansy, who almost hit the fence by accident, complained loudly. Even if you say that, I really don't know. The little girl looked innocent and said helplessly with her hands spread out. It is also the first time I have split into two people. What can I do? Then is the purpose of the other you to kill you? Hanekeyuan changed the direction of the conversation and asked. Yes. Although the main reason is not clear, I feel that the other party might think that as long as she kills me she can become the real herself. The little girl nodded. By the way, speaking of which, until now I still don't know your name. Mizuki Takemiya suddenly asked, putting her hands together. That's right, my name is. Well, although I want to tell you, in fact I haven't recovered the memory in this area. But for the time being I will tell you the fake name I used before. You can call me Yuxuan Wang Yuxuan. Alright, let's not talk about the useless puppy for now, but from what this young lady said, Jiangjin isn't as safe as it seems. Speaking of which, we've just experienced the terrifying event of Jiangjin University's anniversary celebration, and now there's the strange former Earth god causing trouble. Isn't this city too plagued with disasters? She stared at Mizuki Takemiya with bright eyes. In short, if it's possible, I hope that you can return to Fusang as soon as possible. But Mizuki Takemiya was still hesitant. There's no buts. You've already investigated the investment environment and you've also seen that person. You don't have any reason to continue staying here, right? That person? Miss Flowering Garden. You really know something, right? Mizuki Takemiya's eyes lit up as he stared at Flowering Garden Yuan. The latter was annoyed because she realized that she had made a slip of the tongue. Ignoring the mockery of the five-leaf jinx, Puppy-chan, Baka Baka, Hanakeyuan stared at Rueishi with a serious expression, intending to fool her. At this moment, the former Earth God girl who had been silent all this time, suddenly raised her head. Here. Almost at the same time as she spoke, an earth wall suddenly rose on the road in front of the car. Wu Yejin, who was caught off guard, immediately turned the steering wheel and barely drifted to the left side of the street. Just as she was about to stop the car to check the situation, the ground behind the car suddenly collapsed. What's with this disaster movie déjà vu? So Wu Yejin could only scream and step on the accelerator, making the luxury car worth hundreds or even tens of millions rush out with the roar of the motor. The collapsed ground behind and the erected earth wall in front are all to lead us to a certain place. We can't let her do what she wants. The little girl said loudly. Take off your clothes, idiot. Faster. Flowering Garden Yuan also said loudly. It's easy to say. You can drive if you want. Wu Yejin shouted back with a louder voice. My legs are short. The little girl said with a serious face. I can't reach the pedals. I don't have a driver's license. Flowering Garden Yuan also replied with a serious face. Then shut up. Wu Yejin felt that sooner or later she would have high blood pressure because of these two guys. Seeing that another stone wall was erected in front of them, Flowering Garden Yuan seemed to have made a decision and squeezed her fingers. Don't be afraid of the wall, we'll crash through it. I don't care what's going to happen. After being instigated by her, Five-Leaf Jinx stepped on the accelerator again without hesitation. The moment the car was about to hit the stone wall, Flowering Garden Yuan had already pinched her string of Buddha beads and shouted at the wall, break. As a result, the wall seemed to have been bombed by a rocket and a gap was blasted out, allowing their car to pass through. Good job, this way we're out of the other party's guidance plan. Take advantage of this to escape as far as possible. The little girl shouted excitedly. But she seemed to be happy too early. The road their car was on was stripped from the ground by an unknown force, and in the process of slowly floating up, it directly turned into a crooked track like a roller coaster. Unfortunately, their car wasn't up to the task of a roller coaster. It didn't run far before it flew out from a high platform, flipped in the air and finally smashed onto the ground. Even with the double blessing of Flowering Garden Yuan and the former Earth Goddess little girl, the passengers inside were still dizzy from the fall. After a while, because of the cushioning of the airbag, Wu Yejin, who in a sense suffered the lightest injury, climbed out of the car and tried to pull the others out as well. After all, as a god, although she didn't have other gods to guide her on how to use her divine power like Chihaya Fukuyama, which resulted in her strength being more trash than Chihaya Fukuyama, her divine body with stronger resistance and recovery ability allowed her to quickly recover to her normal state. It wasn't difficult for her to pull the others out of the car. After a while, Flowering Garden Yuan woke up, but just as she stood up, she was in so much pain that she gasped. Her rich experience in battle and injury told her that her calf was broken. If it was on a normal day, this kind of injury could be cured with a little time and a short lifespan. If she didn't want to use her lifespan, she only needed to rest for a week at most. But now she obviously didn't have that much time to recover. Then the little girl and Mizuki Takemiya also woke up. Unlike the unlucky flowering garden, the two of them only had some slight scratches. Little Go, quickly take Miss Feigong and that little guy out of here. I'll cover them. Flowering Garden Yuan said without a trace of panic. But is this really okay? Wu Yejin was obviously a little hesitant. Miss Flowering Garden. Mizuki Takemiya looked at the calf that Flowering Garden Yuan was holding and seemed to understand something. They're coming. The former Earth Goddess little girl warned again. Looking back, although they could only see a few monsters made of mud, if they listened carefully they could hear more heavy footsteps than that. In addition to the mud monsters, there were also many man-eating monsters coming here. Don't hesitate, little Go. It's up to you whether you want to take a taxi or something else. Take Miss Feigong and the others to that guy's residence. Since these monsters are so blatant and completely ignore the rules of keeping secrets from ordinary people, that guy will definitely not stand by and watch. Hanyuan Yuan exhaled softly, and then his eyes became firm. I'm the only one who can stop these monsters. Now that I've lost my ability to move, I'll only be a burden if I follow you, so. But before she finished speaking, Wu Yejin, who had turned into God mode, took out the heavenly jade flower and carried her on her back. The other two girls also showed the same expression as Wu Yejin. Flowering Garden. Oh, Miss Yuan. We won't leave you behind. Mizuki Takemiya's eyes didn't have the slightest confusion. Well, although I don't like you very much since it's Big Sister's order, then I won't leave you behind. Wu Yejin, who could still run at a relatively fast speed while carrying Flowering Garden, also said. Feigong didn't even leave me, a total stranger. I don't think she'll leave you behind. The former Earth Goddess little girl also said with a smile. You. Flowering Garden showed a somewhat confused expression at first, but then she immediately recovered her usual clarity. I know, you have to remember it well, little Go. Why did your tone suddenly become so amazing? And don't call me little Go. Ignoring the five-leaf pansy's protest, Hua Kaiyuan took out a stack of paper talismans from his backpack and threw it backward. The paper talismans flew out in a flurry and created a series of rumbling explosions behind him. Paper talismans that did not have a specific technique attached to them were not very powerful. However, the original purpose of the Blossom Courtyard was to hinder the advance of those monsters. Rather than using a specific technique to deal damage and wasting a lot of spiritual energy, it was better to save some spiritual energy to ensure that they could deal with all kinds of situations later. The former Earth Goddess girl was not idle either. She kept using the same ability to change the terrain to slow down the enemy's pursuit. Although the effect was not great on the invisible trolls because they were more agile, it was very effective on the big mud men. Even Viola Cordifolia turned back to help from time to time. Naturally, she did not know anything about spells, and this situation did not give her the opportunity to perform the divine music dance. However, she could still pull out the divine power in her body and launch it as a projectile with the help of the celestial jewel. She could still do such a simple thing. When her stamina was running low, there was still a mobile humanoid buff concubine Gong Ruishi beside her. With just a word of encouragement, she would be able to shout Big Sister and recover her morale. If the other gods of Fusang saw the celestial jewel used so crudely in Fusang mythology, they would be so angry that they would vomit blood. Everything was going well. It should have been like this. But when they were about to run to a wider road, a young woman made of mud suddenly blocked their way. Because it took me a lot of effort to deal with the old friend on the other side, so I gave you time to escape. But in the end you are still in such a mess. I'm very disappointed. Chapter 359. After cleaning up the second-floor corridor, Song Yu slowly walked down the stairs with a mop. As expected, she saw Emily playing games in the living room. Where's Xing? Isn't he back yet? The girl couldn't help but ask because she didn't see the person who was usually inseparable from her. Mr. Landlord still has something to do. Because of a distraction, the character on the screen was trampled to death by a giant flying dragon. Emily was stunned for a few seconds, then decisively pressed the home button on the controller. He didn't care about the save file named Tootie and switched to another game. Speak? Really? If only he could make it in time for dinner. Song Yu pouted and complained. He didn't come back to eat yesterday and didn't even call. All the dishes were wasted. Emofong, I can eat them all, Emoli replied confidently. Speak? Although it's good that there won't be any leftovers. But Emoli, don't you think you ate a little too much? Don't worry, I don't get fat no matter how much I eat. Emoli gave her a thumbs up. This caused her character to die again in the hands of a giant humanoid boss. Speak? Oh, I'm so envious. After Mr. Landlord's test, I can eat a dragon without any problems, Emoli continued to boast. Speak? Looks like I'll have to have a good talk with Xinxing about diet and health in the future. Speaking of which, what's with your weird pronunciation? Song Yu asked curiously. Image change. Emoli probably felt a little annoyed. After his character died again, he turned off the game and turned his head to look out the window. Speak? I don't think this kind of pronunciation is useful for image change. Song Yu sighed helplessly. Her gaze followed Emoli's direction and was attracted by the scenery outside the window. It's snowing? I thought the weather would continue to warm up. You are indeed beautiful, but what are we going to do with the clothes we just washed today? Speaking of which, if the snow gets heavier, it won't be convenient for us to go out and buy groceries. Xingyan also rushed out after receiving a phone call. She said she was looking for some information. She put the mop aside and took out her mobile phone. She was about to call Su Xinxing, but she was afraid of affecting his work. After hesitating for a moment, she called Chihaya Fukuyama, who was hanging out with Asahi Sakura Kanji outside. Oh, is this Chihaya-chan? Can you bring some ingredients back for me? Since I'm going to make a salad, I'll buy a bottle of Thousand Island sauce. What? Cold joke? I'm not joking. By the way, remember to pick up chuketsu from the extracurricular class when you come back. After saying all this, Song Yu hung up the phone and put the mop back in the utility room. She then put on an apron. Anyway, let's whip up the cream first. Hearing this, Emoli's eyes lit up and he jumped up from the sofa. Is it a sundae? Do you want to make a sundae? Isn't there a picky eater upstairs? Song Yu said helplessly. Actually, rather than saying she was picky, it was more accurate to say that she was pica. Although she didn't know the reason, Yu Xingjing, magical girl, seemed to only eat sweets. Even if she ate other food under Su Xinxing's coercion such as vegetables and meat, please don't associate it with filthy places, she still couldn't fill her stomach. Oh. Jasmine had an excited look on her face. Well, help. Why are you so enthusiastic only at times like this? Just as Song Yu was about to start making the sundae, the ground suddenly shook violently. Wah! What's going on? Is it an earthquake? This gave Song Yu a fright. Fortunately, the shaking didn't continue. However, the strange feeling didn't disappear because of this. Not long after, the air was filled with a strange feeling that made people's hair stand on end. Even a normal person like Song Yu felt her skin go numb as if the atmosphere is trembling. Emoli turned his head again and looked out the window. The landlord is angry. After a while, she seemed to have thought of something and added another sentence. Say it. It's fine if I don't add it right. Super Administrative Office, Tianjing General Administration, Imperial Astronomer Branch. As a national organization that existed since ancient times, its main function was to observe the stars and use it as a benchmark for divination. The imperial astronomer was able to survive until now naturally had its reasons for existing. Since ancient times, Huaxia didn't lack people with the ability to predict the future. The smallest ones were the plum blossom poems, the biggest ones were the songs of the universe, and the middle ones were the songs of pancakes and so on. However, because the interpretation couldn't keep up, there were many situations where accurate predictions were useless. Even in modern society, the imperial astronomer still had diviners in the same lineage. This was the deepest part of the imperial astronomer. It was separated by 12 80mm thick alloy doors that could withstand nuclear explosions. It was a 3-kilometer deep bomb shelter. This was a pitch-black world. Although it's not my first time here, no matter how many times I've been here, I still can't get used to it. After going through a total of 12 identity checks, the former head of Jiangjin's super administrative office, Su Feng, slowly walked into this dark room. Because of the LED lights in the tunnel outside, it was very bright. Therefore, it made the room even more dark. Even the light from outside couldn't pass through the doorway at all. After his eyes adapted to the darkness, he realized that the room wasn't completely devoid of light. The room was densely packed with tiny specks of light. To put it in a more aesthetically pleasing way, it was as bright and beautiful as the vast galaxy. In fact, if they waited until nighttime and came to the ground above the bomb shelter and carefully observed the night sky, they would be able to find that the positions of the specks of light were exactly the same as the stars. Obviously, the starry sky gave people a feeling of vastness and depth. However, as long as they remembered that they were in a space 3 kilometers deep underground, it would make people feel extremely depressed. Su Feng continued to walk forward. The strange thing was that no matter how long he walked, the scene of the starry sky around him didn't change at all. After walking in this unchanging world for about 10 minutes, Su Feng finally saw something different from the stars in front of him. It was an extremely huge armillary sphere that looked like it was made of brass. However, the difference between this armillary sphere and an ordinary armillary sphere was that the ecliptic, horizontal, meridian, sextant, white, inner equatorial, and right ascension rings of this armillary sphere were filled with the feeling of gears or a clock. Even now it was like a huge pendulum clacking rhythmically. Moreover, it didn't have a base. It was suspended in midair in a way that would make Newton angry. Of course, the most eye-catching thing was the girl in the center of the armillary sphere. There was clearly no flat surface in the middle of the armillary sphere, but she was sitting in the middle as if she was sitting on flat ground. Her long snow-white skirt and ankle-length white hair were scattered around her body. That kind of serene and holy temperament made it impossible for anyone to have the slightest thought of profaning her. From the outside, it looked like the girl was imprisoned in the armillary sphere. However, the girl didn't feel anything special about it. She just sat there quietly like a lifeless puppet. Master Yun, I've been ordered to listen to your prophecy. Su Feng bowed deeply to the girl and said in an extremely respectful tone. The girl opened her eyes. Her pale pupils looked a little scary, but if one looked closely, one would find that her eyes were not focused. She was blind. However, this didn't prevent Su Feng from having the highest respect for the girl. As the only prophet in the imperial astronomer, the girl had foretold many crises and helped the super administrative office through several huge disasters. If it wasn't for her existence, the casualty rate of the super administrative office would have increased by at least 30%. However, no matter which prophecy she made before, she had always been unhurried. Only this time she took the initiative to contact the supervisor of the super administrative office. Of course, the people of the super administrative office believed in her prophecy. Even if it was such a vague language, they specially sent an expert like Su Feng to listen to it. However, the words that came out of her mouth gave Su Feng a huge fright. The world is on the verge of destruction, she said slowly. It's just a thought from that person. It will decide whether this world will be destroyed or continue to exist. That person? Who is it? Su Feng asked immediately. Whether it was for public or private reasons, he had to meet the person who could cause the world's destruction. I don't know. Hey. I'm not joking with you. I hope you can understand. The girl didn't get angry because of Su Feng's suspicious gaze. She just continued, because even I can't observe that person's future. He seems to be independent of the entire world and the entire timeline. He can't be observed or detected. If it wasn't for the fact that this is related to the fate of the world and allowed me to find some clues, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to discover that person's existence until now. If that's the case, how can we stop this disaster? Su Feng immediately asked. Unfortunately, if that person decides to destroy the world, all of this can't be avoided. The girl said slowly. Su Feng rubbed his nose in disbelief. Then he asked the girl, if that's the case, why did you take the initiative to contact the supervisor and the others? Because the world might be destroyed soon. Before that, can I bask in the sun for a while? The girl asked expectantly. Yes, if you can promise to follow the safety provisions of the Bureau. Thank you very much. No, I should be the one thanking you. It's been hard on you all these years, Master Yun. What happened? The previous lord of the land of Jiangjin, a 1,000-year-old evil spirit that was plagued by resentment, was trying hard to understand the scene in front of him with the knowledge that he had accumulated for more than 3,000 years. What did that ordinary-looking human male do? Why did all the man-eating demons around him disappear the moment he appeared? No, even the wisp of souls that the monsters swore allegiance to him was gone. Could it be that all the demons were killed at that moment? No, impossible. How could there be such a ridiculous thing in the world? Other small fries aside, the two demons that he subdued in the mountains south of Jiangjin, Black Wind and Yellow Sand, were both big demons. If placed in the journey to the west, they would be a small boss in the chapter. In this era where spiritual energy was scarce, there were not many people who could defeat them one-on-one, let alone kill them in an instant. Not only that, the Yellow Earth strongman that he summoned also disappeared. It was not as simple as being defeated, it was erased from its roots. Although he did not know what happened, he could feel that the spell Yellow Earth strongman summoned had completely disappeared. No matter how prepared he was, in this world no one would be able to cast this spell again. Even this body of his had almost collapsed due to a small part of the tactics that were related to the tactics he had constructed. "What's wrong, aren't you going to attack?" the other party said in a cold voice. His half-opened dead fish eyes were listless, and his slack standing posture was full of flaws no matter how one looked at it. In any case, he did not have the angry look that he said when he appeared just now. As the former landlord of Jiangjin, the 1,000-year-old evil spirit wanted to make the first move. After all, not close combat in a battle of spells, the first move would have a certain advantage. But for some reason, it was as if her whole body was immersed in reinforced concrete, and she could not move a finger no matter what. Even if you are unconscious, your body has already sensed my anger and so instinctively lost the ability to move. You are not an idiot to charge at me and self-destruct, causing me to have to spend a little more effort to deal with you. Let's give you a compliment. Su Xinxing raised his eyebrows and said slowly in his usual voice, "Then as a compliment, I will let you have a good taste of my angry fist. Don't worry, before you have a taste of the full set, I will do my best to minimize the damage." As he said that, Su Xinxing threw a punch at the sky. There was no physical sound, but everyone present seemed to hear the sharp sound of glass shattering. Then dense cracks appeared in the sky and a liquid that looked like water seeped out from the cracks. In the end, the entire sky could not bear the burden and shattered with a bang. A large amount of black liquid fell from the sky, and in an instant, drowned the place where they were. At first, the 1,000-year-old evil spirit who had once been a god of the earth, thought that the celestial river had been pierced through. After all, everyone knew the story of Nuwa mending the heavens. But soon she realized that something was not right. The fluid disappeared the moment it touched the ground, and what changed was the color of the surrounding sky. It was clearly afternoon, but now the sky had turned dark gray. Where the sun should have been, there was now a bright red moon hanging high above. The 1,000-year-old evil spirit seemed to have realized something, but her rationality made her refuse to believe it. That seemingly ordinary mortal actually punched out a different dimension in the world, similar to a blessed land. What a joke, how could such a thing happen? Then first, run around blindly and I can't find you no matter what, punch. Before she could clear her thoughts, Su Xinxing's fist had already hit her face in the form of a friendship punch. Thus, the 1,000-year-old evil spirit flew out like a cannonball, breaking through the sound barrier along the way. In the end, it crashed into the ground, blasting everything within a 1-kilometer radius into powder. The remaining force plowed a huge trench more than 10 meters deep into the ground. Logically speaking, after taking this punch, even if a 1,000-year-old evil spirit was dozens of times stronger, with a dozen of them tied together, her body and soul would almost be destroyed, let alone a 1,000-year-old evil spirit. But she was surprised to find that although her body was beaten into minced meat, her consciousness was still clear. What surprised her even more was that even though her body was made of mud and had no sense of pain, she could feel that all the bones in her body were broken and her muscle fibers were twisted into a ball like a ball of yarn. It was a heart-wrenching pain that could make one faint from the pain. But the punch just now sent her flying at least 10 kilometers away, so that horrible monster should not appear in a short time. Next, you know Jiangjin is under my protection, but you still dare to cause trouble, punch. Boom. More than 10 kilometers away, Hanakeyuan Yuan, who was still conscious, saw a mushroom cloud slowly rising in the distance. About a minute later, a violent storm swept over from that direction. The originally harmless dust and gravel became a horrible killing weapon in this gale with a speed of more than 120 meters per second. Helpless, Hanakyu and Yuan could only try to set up a windsickle to wrap everyone in it, and then crouch down to cover Wu Yejin and Mizuki Takemiya as much as possible, trying to block this terrible storm that could kill tens of thousands of people. But the impact that they imagined did not come. A faint halo appeared on their bodies, and the halo was like the most solid wall, easily blocking the terrible gale for them. If Emoli was here, he would find that although it was invisible to the naked eye, everyone present had a lot of protection spells superimposed on them, enough to protect them from being inexplicably killed by Su Shenxing's attack. Wu, but for some reason the former soil girl curled up as if she was in great pain, moaning miserably, and her fair and smooth forehead was full of beads of sweat. Could it be? Hanakyu and Yuan saw this scene and immediately guessed the reason. Perhaps Su Shenxing's attack would directly affect the soul, so even if the enemy was just a soil clone, it could still cause considerable damage. But the problem was that Wang Yuxuan was the same body as the 1,000-year-old evil spirit, so this kind of attack on the soul would naturally affect the little girl. Not only did you cause trouble, but you also dared to hit my acquaintance. As Su Shenxing's angry voice came from 10 kilometers away, a bigger mushroom cloud than before rose again. This time with that area as the center, the whole ground sank at least 30 meters. Judging from the splashing water everywhere, even the underground water was blown out. The little girl's sorrowful cry had stopped, and now she could only suck in cold air weakly. If this continued, no one knew what would happen to the enemy, but the little girl would definitely die from the pain. Hanakyu and Yuan hesitated for a moment, then took out a talisman and muttered to himself, "This is really not like me." Then he directly cast a spell. Spirit-branded retainer summon, Night Escort Itachi. Night Escort Itachi was a kind of monster that lived in the northern part of Aizu. There were also rumors in Katong Prefecture of Hyogo Prefecture, but it was called Night Escort Dog there. It would quietly escort people home at night to prevent them from being attacked by other monsters. It was a kind monster that was closer to people, and it was also said to be a branch of the dog god. What appeared in front of Hanakyu and Yuan was a huge snow-white wolf-like creature. Its head and forelimbs had bright red runes, which was a sign of loyalty to the Onmyoji. In addition, its real name was also given to the subordinate Onmyoji. Compared to the dog god, which had the possibility of backfiring, Night Escort Itachi was the type that would serve the summoner wholeheartedly, just like Guan Hu. "Sorry, but now I need your strength." Hanakyu and Yuan took the little girl and climbed on the back of Night Escort Itachi. Because the injury on his calf hadn't healed, it was difficult for him to climb. In short, when Night Escort Itachi ran to Su Shenxing's side, the other side had already added another punch. "Although I don't want to be famous for the time being, in short, I just want to hit you." This punch was much more powerful than the previous ones. The entire crust was shattered and the ground directly sank into the lava layer. Lava gushed out from the ground. In just a split second, when Night's End Itachi broke through the hurricane caused by the punch, the ground had already turned into a lava river. After this punch, the little girl had already breathed in less and exhaled more. Looking down from the sky, the 1,000-year-old evil spirit that was attached to the clay doll was now only a piece of clay the size of a human head. It was still wriggling in the lava. Only God knew how the clay didn't burn in the lava. Su Shenxing stood next to her, and the expression on his face was a little more vivid than before. Because he was also in the lava river, his trousers were still burned from trousers to boxers. Fortunately, because he still had some sense of shame, Su Shenxing had now cast fire protection on it so it wouldn't continue to burn. In addition, the sleeve on his upper body's right arm had also disappeared, probably because he forgot to protect his clothes when he punched. But other than that, there was no change at all, as if the 4 punches just now didn't cause him any consumption at all. "Phew, I'm satisfied. Next, I'll directly send you to heaven." Because your soul will be scattered, don't expect to be reincarnated or anything. I've always been a believer in the creed of cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots. After venting his anger, Su Shenxing's face was refreshed. As he spoke, he threw the last punch at the lump of clay. The 1,000-year-old evil spirit's heart had long been frightened to the extreme. When she took the second punch, she found that Su Shenxing could ignore the outer shell and directly cause damage to the soul. So she wanted to give up this clone and escape back to her own body, but she failed. This space seemed to be shrouded in a strange power, and she couldn't even retract her soul back to her original body. She could only obediently become the opponent's target. After 4 consecutive punches, her soul had long been weakened to the extreme. Even if she could escape here, it was estimated that she wouldn't be much stronger than an ordinary wandering ghost. "Have mercy," Hanakeyuan Yuan shouted. "I didn't use a knife." Although he complained, Su Shenxing still withdrew his fist. He turned his head to look at Hanakeyuan Yuan. "What's the matter?" "I'm busy." At this time, Night Itachi had already landed on the ground. Hanakeyuan Yuan naturally carried the little girl who was about to lose her life and slid down from the back of the big white wolf. Although there was no explanation, Su Shenxing looked at the little girl and then looked at the lump of 1,000-year-old clay. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "Omozoi." As he spoke, he waved his hand. This strange space suddenly collapsed and the world returned to its original state. Only the fluttering snowflakes seemed to be falling even harder. Tianjing Super Administrative Office, Garden Courtyard. The world won't be destroyed," a white-haired girl who was sunbathing suddenly said. "I think Great Master Yun just wanted to come out and bask in the sun." Su Feng, who was pushing the girl's wheelchair, couldn't help but ridicule. Just running from underground to the surface in less than 10 minutes, the crisis of the world's destruction was gone. Who would believe that? In this era, no one even believes in the truth. I can't help but fall into deep thought. Must be a problem with the body. I'm afraid the Celestial Empire will be the biggest loser. So, in the future, can you watch less of the UC news? If there's no problem, how about we go back? It's rare to have such good weather. Let me continue to bask in the sun for a while. The girl stuck out her tongue and acted spoiled. "Great Master Yun, if I remember correctly, you're old enough to be my grandmother, right? Mr. Sudino? If you casually ridicule a lady's age, you'll receive bad karma. For example, you'll work overtime without pay, your salary will be lowered, and so on. Spare me, you're too late." Su Shenxing complained to Xiao Jingyi, who had just arrived. By the way, Mizuki Takemiya and the rest had already been taken away by Hanakeyuan. "Nonsense. If you have the ability, then drive from the back of the strange maze-like terrain and directly find the path to here." Xiao Jingyi rolled down the window and ridiculed in dissatisfaction. "Speaking of which, what's with your appearance? Are you cosplaying as San Mao from San Mao's Wanderings?" "That's too old, the readers won't understand." Because half of his clothes were burned and covered with dust from the mushroom cloud, and there were traces of smoke on his body, Su Shenxing's current appearance gave people a sense of desolation like a beggar at first glance. However, Xiao Jingyi also knew how abnormal Su Shenxing's physical strength was. Not to mention a mere snowy day, even if it was raining knives from the sky, this guy could run around the earth naked without panting. Thus he didn't bother with this matter. "How do you plan to deal with this matter?" Su Shenxing raised his head and looked at the messy ground that seemed to have experienced a magnitude 12 earthquake. He couldn't help but ask Xiao Jingyi. "Apply for collective hypnosis from the higher-ups, and then tell the public that there was a gas pipeline explosion." Xiao Jingyi replied without hesitation. "Isn't Jiangjin's gas pipeline explosion too frequent?" Su Shenxing couldn't help but click his tongue. That's right, recently there were already 2 or 3 gas pipeline laying companies that lost their pants in Jiangjin. So they still had to ask for compensation? That's too pitiful, quickly stop. Speaking of which, are you planning to change your profession to become a human trafficker? Xiao Jingyi glanced behind Su Shenxing. Our protagonist was carrying the former god of earth on his back. Please don't use your dirty mind to guess my thoughts. This child is related to this incident, so I have to bring her along. Although he said that, the most important thing right now wasn't to chat. Su Shenxing put the little girl in the back seat of the car and sat in the front passenger seat. Go to the mountain behind Jiangjin University? No, let's go back to Ing apartment first. Su Shenxing shook his head. Didn't you say that you were going to directly raid the home of the mastermind? Xiao Jingyi, who didn't know that the mastermind behind the scenes had been beaten to a pulp by Su Shenxing, had a look of surprise on his face. Don't we have to make some preparations before raiding a home? For example, Emoli, and so on. I'll mourn for the mastermind behind the scenes for 3 seconds. Xiao Jingyi, who knew how cruel Emoli was, drew a cross in front of his chest. Ain. Of course, the main reason why Su Shenxing wanted to go back to Emoli was that Emoli could ignore the effects of the temple and go inside. If it was Su Xinxing, he could only use brute force to break it. Although he had already done it once, he still felt a little guilty, so it was better to let Emoli do it. I think you should mourn for the current Jiangjin Earth God. Su Xinxing corrected him, because if I'm not wrong, we're going to raid that person's home. Ba, what religion do you believe in? Regardless of the nonsensical conversation between the two, Su Xinxing really did arrive at Ying's apartment before dinner this time. Because there was an oil heater in the apartment, not an oil lamp, but a device called an oil heater. The temperature inside was much warmer than outside. You're back. Song Yu, who was waiting at the entrance, smiled as she took Su Xinxing's jacket and hung it on the hanger. Dinner is ready, hurry up and eat, it won't be too late to work after dinner. Then she looked at Xiao Jingyi and the smile on her face instantly disappeared. She returned to her social expression. Oh, isn't this Officer Xiao? If there's anything, please come find Xinxing after dinner. Isn't the treatment too different? Even if you don't want me to stay for dinner, you should at least be polite. Xiao Jingyi, who was treated too harshly, knelt down. Don't worry, it's just a joke. I don't object to Officer Xiao coming for dinner. Dinner. Why did you add emphasis on the word dinner? Are you planning to let me eat for free? Isn't it common sense that freeloaders have no human rights? I've never heard of such common sense. Because Chiketsu was at the dinner table, there was no way to talk about this incident, so let's skip it for now. Let's fast forward to after dinner. The new tenant Yu Xingjing took Chiketsu upstairs to play with him. If you have anything to say, you can say it now. Xiao Jingyi sat on the sofa and asked Su Xinxing, you didn't finish talking in the car just now, right? Wait a minute. Song Yu, where's Xingyan? Su Xinxing asked curiously. I didn't see her during dinner. I think she said she was going to do some research, so she left the apartment in the afternoon. Song Yu replied honestly, otherwise Officer Xiao wouldn't have a share of dinner tonight. It's just a freeloader, do you have to complain for so long? Xiao Jingyi couldn't help but complain. Damn it, if Xiaoqing didn't know how to cook. It's not a freeloader, it's love. Your love is too twisted. Su Xinxing coughed dryly and stopped the two from continuing to argue. Then he began to tell the others what he had heard from Blossoming Courtyard Yuan about what had happened. After listening to the story, Xiao Jingyi couldn't help but fall silent. After a while he asked, in other words, if it's possible, it's best to kill the enemy without hurting the little girl? Yes, but that's only the most optimistic situation if it really doesn't work. Su Xinxing didn't continue, but everyone knew what he meant. If it really didn't work, even if it meant sacrificing the little girl, they had to kill the enemy. As a hero, Su Xinxing had experienced this kind of choice too many times, so he was no longer conflicted when faced with this kind of problem. Emoli crawled over from the other end of the sofa and patted Su Xinxing's shoulder. Su Xinxing smiled helplessly, then rubbed the girl's hair. I'm not reduced to the point where I need you to comfort me. The snow is getting heavier. Is it really okay to drive there at night? Chihaya Fukuyama looked at the window. The edges of the window had begun to snow. The weather outside had also changed from heavy snow to a snowstorm. It's okay if it's only to this extent. Su Xinxing was quite optimistic. That's right, as long as the city is covered in fire. Emoli on the side agreed. Don't blow up the entire Jiangjin just to clear a path. At this time, the door of Sakura's apartment suddenly opened from the outside. The person who appeared at the entrance was Qin Xingyan with a lot of snowflakes on his hair. Xingyan, where have you been? Song Yu hurriedly took out a towel to help the girl wipe her face and hair. I went to the nearby Bailu Temple branch. Recently, the master seems to be planning to expand the business, and has already opened the branch to a nearby city. Qin Xingyan replied. By the way, the girl had asked the elder in charge of the branch why they didn't just open the branch in Jiangjin. The elder's answer was that the current head of the Bailu Temple thought that if the branch was opened in Jiangjin, there was an 80% chance that it would mysteriously be blown up for various reasons. How to put it? In a sense, it was a very wise decision. Did you find out anything? Su Xinxing was tongue-tied. He didn't know if he should be concerned about the girl's situation. In the end, he could only use a more businesslike tone to ask. Qin Xingyan, on the other hand, was not at all unhappy with his businesslike tone. Instead, he happily came over like a puppy being called by its owner. I found some information about the previous Earth God in Jiangjin. In the historical records, the evaluation of the Earth God was very positive. However, later on, because she developed feelings for a mortal scholar, she was punished by the heavens and was banished from the immortal records. As for the scholar, he was like the image of a scholar in many stories. He was a heartless person. Soon he cast the earth god aside and went to flatter the princess of a human kingdom. He wanted to be the emperor's son-in-law and used this opportunity to have a meteoric rise. Qin Xingyan gave a brief summary of the information he found. After being betrayed by the scholar, being tortured day and night by the heavens, and losing her immortal records, the earth god gradually became crazy. In a fit of anger, she cursed the king's family and even set a curse on the entire country. However, this atrocity was discovered by the monks at that time. They worked together to defeat and seal the curse. The information ends here. By the way, because the ancestors of the Bailu temple were among the monks, this information was left behind. I see, the Bailu temple was not too far away from here. The previous earth god was also the earth god in Jiangjin. The rebellion should have happened in this era, so it was not strange to run into her. However, although I have obtained the background story and relevant settings, it is not very helpful for the current situation. Su Xinxing muttered in his heart. In addition, I have also found some information about the octagonal demon formation. This formation is a simplified version of the curse that the previous earth god wanted to set on the entire country. The original scale required 8,888 heads, and there were specific requirements for the shape of the heads. The specific effects of this formation are not clear, but one of its effects seems to be that it can cause considerable damage to the soil and water of an area. She actually wanted to set up such an evil formation and even risked being discovered after it failed. She wanted to set it up again and even disregarded the basic rules of the inner world, showing the supernatural side of the entire world in public. It seemed that the hatred of the 1,000-year-old evil spirit for the entire Jiangjin, or rather the entire human race, was not small. If it was somewhere else, this kind of convenient setting and long-lasting curse might be able to succeed. Unfortunately, she chose the wrong place. Su Xinxing was in charge of Jiangjin. Even if the curse really succeeded, Su Xinxing had a way to break this kind of curse-like effect. Of course, he would need to use a slightly more intense method. We can't delay any longer. Up until now, the Earth God girl has not asked us for help. I keep feeling that something is wrong. Thinking of this, Su Xinxing did not continue to dawdle. He stood up and said to Qin Xingyan, "Get ready, we will go directly to the back mountain of Jiangjin." As long as there was a wound, it would be much easier to extract power. After pulling out her dagger, the woman didn't hesitate and directly stabbed at the petrified earth god lowly. But at this moment, a yellowish-brown object suddenly jumped out from the ground and knocked the dagger out of her hand. Was it a spiritual beast raised by the earth god? This thought immediately surfaced in the woman's mind. After all, wild animals could not enter the earth shrine. Only the spiritual beasts raised by the earth shrine could appear here. But then she realized that she seemed to be wrong. That yellowish-brown long object was not a snake or something like that, but tree roots? Many thick vine-like tree roots grew out from the ceiling and floor of the room, protecting the statue of the earth god lowly within, leaving no space for the woman to attack. Why would tree roots appear in a place like this? Could it be that this girl still has a trick up her sleeve? No, if that's the case, there was no need to hide such a trump card during the battle just now. The woman tried to use Lulu tirelessly to attack the tree roots. Those tree roots were obviously also products of spiritual energy. After being cut by Lulu tirelessly, they immediately turned black and withered. In the end, the tree roots that were as thick as a person's forearm withered to the size of a pinky finger. But no matter how many were cut, the tree roots would continue to grow, making the woman feel that what she was doing was useless. Damn it, won't this be completely endless? The angry woman threw the dagger on the ground fiercely, and at the same time she was somewhat discouraged. Why was it so difficult for her to do something? Now that the man-eating fiends and Yellow Earth Hercules under his command had been completely annihilated, it was unrealistic for him to continue activating the formation by himself. Furthermore, even if he were to forcefully activate it, he reckoned that the monster that had beaten him to such a state would definitely come over and destroy the formation before it was fully activated. Then what should she do? The woman thought desperately. At this time she suddenly noticed that the gem blade of the Lulu tirelessly card that she had thrown on the ground was actually blossoming with a faint, weak light. Without a doubt that was the scene of this ominous dagger activating its effect. Logically speaking, this was not very possible because the Lulu tirelessly card was still something similar to a magic weapon. Without magic power or spiritual energy or the like, there was no way to activate its effect. And now that she was not holding it in her hands, where would there be any magic power or spiritual energy to supply it? Wait, spiritual energy? The woman quickly walked to the side of the study, and found the topographic map of the entire Jiangjin's spirit vein. Naturally, there was also some other information marked by the earth god lowly. Suppressing river seal? And living soil? So it's like this, the spirit vein in this city is unstable, so this guy used the living soil and the suppressing river seal to change the direction of the spirit vein, using the earth god temple as the main switch of the spirit vein. I was thinking that my original earth god temple was clearly the core of the spirit vein, and in a mere 400 years, it was impossible for the spirit vein to change direction due to natural changes. So this kind of thing happened. Speaking to here, the woman suddenly revealed a flirtatious and evil smile. In the end, even if there are treasures like the suppressing river seal and living soil of laurel, changing the path of the spirit vein is also a type of magic. Moreover, it is a type of magic that concentrates spiritual energy. No wonder the Lulu tirelessly card had a reaction, because the concentration of spiritual energy can naturally activate this kind of magic weapon that is crudely made and does not have an owner recognition mechanism. And the level of the magic to change the path of the spirit vein itself is not high, so it is within the range that the Lulu tirelessly card can destroy. As she spoke, her face revealed an expression of ecstasy, and that distorted face could simply become an expression that surpassed the king of beauty and art. Evil heavens, I didn't think that you would also have a moment of carelessness. This city's spirit vein, I will take it. But 10 seconds after they fell, they saw Qin Xingyan sitting on a flying sword. I can fly too. Emoli suddenly realized something and punched his palm. Then he also floated up. In the end, only Su Shenxing, who couldn't fly, shouted F***CK, and smashed into the barrier of the Earth Temple, breaking the boundary between man and God. It was a very comedic human-shaped hole. After Su Shenxing pulled his head out, he saw the former Earth Goddess in front of him, who was in a queen-like posture. She probably wanted to say something, but after seeing Su Shenxing land headfirst and insert his head into Mother Earth's body, she was greatly shocked. She failed the willpower test and entered a state of shock. She was stunned for a moment, but when she saw Su Shenxing land headfirst and insert his head into Mother Earth's body, she was shocked. She failed the willpower test and entered a state of shock. I knew you would come, human. After being stunned for about 3 seconds, she decided to pretend that she didn't see anything. She continued to pose and say the lines of the final boss battle, but it's all too late. It's the punch of everything goes black, and when you come back to your senses, you can't remember anything. But before she could finish speaking, Su Shenxing directly punched her in the face and blasted her into the wall. Then the wall caved in like the bottom of a pot. At the center of the pot was a bottomless human-shaped hole. Not good, I accidentally attacked out of reflex. Su Shenxing immediately reflected on his mistake. After all, they were underground. If a random punch caused a magnitude 12 earthquake in Jiangjin, it would not be an awkward situation. He was afraid that he would really be in trouble. Fortunately, the Earth Temple seemed to be much sturdier than the outside world. The aftershock caused by this punch was completely blocked by the boundary between man and God, the barrier of the Earth Temple. Also, the texture feels a little different. Then Su Shenxing realized that something was wrong. Could it be because the body isn't formed by mud this time? No, it's not just that. At this time, the original Earth God, domineering older sister, who Su Shenxing thought could only spend the rest of her life paralyzed in bed, crawled out of the big hole. She stared at Su Shenxing, showing that victory was in her hands. Haven't you noticed? All the spiritual energy in Jiangjin is slowly flowing into my body. No matter how much damage you cause, it can be repaired in an instant. And as the spiritual energy strengthens my body, I can also obtain strength that far surpasses my previous strength. I'm definitely going to win. Before saying this, I think it's better for you to fix your bruised and swollen face first. Su Shinxing looked at the other party's half-dead appearance and couldn't help but feel a little speechless. Of course, all of this is not without a price. Even if I'm the previous Earth God, even if I've slightly modified my body, even if I'm under the influence of heaven's punishment, my body can't limitlessly accommodate all the spiritual energy in a city. In the end, I'll definitely turn into a monster because of the excessive amount of spiritual energy. The woman quickly fixed her face, then pretended that nothing had happened and continued, but all of this is worth it, because it will bring me the power to take revenge. It will help me fulfill my final wish. Oh, cold face. That's too cold. No, you must be so shocked that you can't speak, right? That's right, the current me. Actually, you're just bluffing, right? Su Shinxing unhesitatingly exposed the other party's lie. The reason why you didn't fix your face just now is because my attack just now can only heal the more serious injuries in your body in a short time, right? In other words, as long as I use that level of attack a few more times, you'll be dead for sure, right? Just right, I've already thought of the name of the next attack. Please grit your teeth and bear my anger. Wait a minute, didn't you say you were done venting before? Fosa, even I'm angry. The meaning is unclear. That you're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.